and then broadcaster, like the first person I ever heard say "holy cow" because I grew up in New York, like just a legend guy, tough, like old school Yankee.
In the late 80s, he's the Yankee because the Yankees weren't that great in the late 80s. He was the broadcaster, 50-year baseball man.
Yep. You know, mobile. I don't want to blow up his spot, but he's a great kid. He's a Dolphins fan, which is a huge issue. I was supposed to see him. I'm running late, but I want to give him a quick hug and kiss because he's phenomenal. I'm hoping I get to work with him again. And if I figured if I didn't say goodbye in person, there was a chance I wouldn't work with him again. So you keep telling your story.
On a scale of 1 to 10, was he?
I think he's a true 9, guaranteed. The truth is, I don't even fully know. That it's unfair for me to rate. My intuition is he's a 9. Yeah.
Wow, that's strong. Anyway, quick thing on Phil Rizzuto. A 9 from Gary is big. So I don't think he gives out a lot of 9s. But the main thing is I tell Phil, I said, I'm going to make it up to you because we all screw up. I'm busting my ass for 3 years trying to find work for Phil Rizzuto everywhere I can. Finally, the guy would never get in the Hall of Fame. It was always controversial. Can Phil get in the Hall of Fame? Is he getting in? Is he getting in? Finally, he gets in the Hall of Fame. And I got every marketing company trying to sign Phil Rizzuto who doesn't have an agent. I'm in his living room. He goes, Steiner, guess what? I'm going to pick you. You're kidding me. How? Why? He goes, you know, when you screwed up, you told me you're going to make it up to me. And every time I turned, you were coming up with more work for me, doing nice things for me, and I believe you. And the moral of that story is run to your problems. Most people that have a problem, they hit a roadblock, they sprint away. Oh, I better stay away from that person. You have an argument with your boss, sprint at them. Go make it up, stay late, do more. Whatever you can do it. Because most people, they're hiding in the corner, they got their head down. Me with Rizzuto, I killed him with work, killed him with love, killed him with kindness, and sure enough, the guy gets in the Hall of Fame. And to get a Yankee Hall of Fame, I had 2 employees at the time, 2. That was a game changer. Run to your problems. Don't run away from them.
You know what's interesting about that? And there's, you know, I was looking at Tyler. I gave him that advice 6 months ago on something that I think we will always think about, and it worked for him. And even more interesting to me is the reverse of that. Brandon, story is also interesting to me. You could crush it for somebody for 6 years, then have a problem. And a lot of people get so bent out of shape. I was fucking delivering for this guy for 6 years, and now I dropped the ball, and he doesn't want to know my name or this anything. You're only as good as your last at bat. Like,
yeah, you better come back twice as hard if you do drop the ball.
Right? But like, you've got to run at your problems early, but you also have to have the humility that the market is the market is the market. The game passes everybody by. Even this piece of shit Tom Brady, who the hell knows why he's still so goddamn good, eventually, Jesus fucking Christ, eventually the game's going to pass him by. Let's get into the first phone call. We're going to get more into your backstory, Brandon, because you really are an incredible East Coast entrepreneur, which I am as well, and I want to get more of that story out, but let's first get this first question.
This is Andrew.
Andrew, it's Gary V, and you're on the Ask Gary V show with Brandon Snyder.
Oh my gosh, man, that is insane. What's going on, man?
Life is good. What's your question?
So, yeah, man, so I was wondering, so I'm kind of in this spot where, you know, I'm 27. Man, I've been, you know, entrepreneurial my whole life. You know, my grandma used to buy me 5-pound bags of gummy bears and not preschool, but, you know, elementary school. I'd put them in Ziploc bags and flip them. So been kind of doing that thing my whole life. And, man, I'm at this crossroads right now, man. I'm really trying to figure out what direction I want to take, you know, my next step. I've tried a few things. And I guess my question to you is, you know, were there ever just like, you know, defining moments where you just knew, you know, what the next step needed to be? Like if you were debating something, what are
you doing right now?
So right now, I'm currently working for Verizon, just sales rep there. Got laid off from the oil industry, and actually I'm doing videography as kind of my passion thing now that I'd like to monetize. And I actually made a Jets hype video for you. That
I know, you sent it to me.
Watch.
Yep, I know.
Yeah, I actually sent it to you like 30 minutes ago again.
I love it. I love it. I love that. I love the other day you caught me perfectly. You're like, hey, like you knew exactly. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you're like, hey, there is no sports right now, so watch.
Yeah.
There was something you did that was clever, and it was really funny. Yeah. I decided I'm still not going to watch it because I wanted to virtually stick it to you without knowing you, but I did like that effort. Man. So Brandon, you know, it's funny because I asked you so many questions. You had some pretty interesting twists and turns. You were in the hospitality business early in your career. Then you saw things like, you know, you had some really interesting moments when you decided to rep talent differently. have the moments where you made the right decisions with whether repping Phil later, you know, with the restaurants, and I know we have to catch everybody up on these things. Did you just know?
No, I knew I was going to, at the end game, like a kid asked me today, he was up in the office, says, do you ever think you're going to be this successful? I said, fuck, of course. You think I started this thing to be a failure? Yeah, I started this thing to be successful.
Can I ask you a really important question?
Sure.
Will you end up being less or more successful than you thought when you were 17?
That's a great question. I hope that I will be more successful than I thought. And right now, I'm less successful than I thought. And I'm not happy about it. I got to be honest with you.
I love your face. I feel like that's going to happen with me too.
I'm not giving in yet. I'm still got something to do about it, and I still got something to say about it, and I'm not giving in. And paint's not dry. But one thing I would tell this gentleman on the phone is that target. I think that you don't dream enough when you got the opportunity. You got a blessing here, even though it sounds like a little bit of adversity. I love the idea of taking a step back, taking out a white piece of paper that's blank, and write down 10 of your dream companies and target the shit out of them. Find out everything you can about those companies.
Or open the notes app and write it down.
Yeah, open the notes app. Sorry about the white pad.
I'm kidding.
But you know what I mean?
I'm having fun.
I love to go find 10 companies. By the way, I still do this to this day. Like, why should I work with a company that I really don't want to work with? Why wouldn't I work with my dream companies I always wanted to work with? This being one of them even, you know, so over here. But at the end, Google search those 10 companies so you know everything about them. Every time something gets written about them, you get that email on your online, and then start looking at decision makers, and then figure out how you're going to go get your foot in the door, whether it be the mailroom, the lunchroom, whatever. Once you get your foot in the door, you're working for a dream company, a dream opportunity. Your energy and passion will be there, and then you find your way. I always worked with and for the people that I always dreamt of. Always thought I was going to work with Mickey Mantle. I figured it out. It wasn't easy. I always thought, wow, imagine if I get Derek Jeter. Figured it out. Yankees. You know how hard it is to partner up, put the Yankee name next to your name? You have Yankee Steiner? Not easy. 2.5 years. Did it.
That was a huge coup. Andrew, you know, I think, look, man, I'll be honest with you. Like, I think you should spend time on debating what creates insecurity or questionings or things of that nature, because that will help you way more than the micro decision on what's the next move, right? Like, for me, it's never been about anything other than I just know it's going to work itself out. I believe in my skills. I put myself in a position to succeed, and I don't question things. And I think the reason I push patience is it's a big thing, like optimism, patience. Even Brandon's answer, he's like, the paint's not dry. How old are you?
58.
Right?
I'm 27.
I know. No worries, Andrew. Brandon's 58 years old. All these 20 and 30-year-olds that watch me all the time, and obviously because of Instagram and YouTube, if they knew, and I say this all the time at 41, I love looking at Brandon because at 58, I know he's just as on fire as I am at 41, as you are, Andrew, at 27. And I've got some news for you. 95% of 27-year-olds don't believe that to be true. Andrew, 95% of the people, 97% of the people believe that Brandon and I are old when they're 27. That's just the way it is. And that's the part that fucks them up. Because if you knew that double your age plus 4, right? You get to be Brandon, and he's still just as on fire right now as you are. All of a sudden, you're not crippled about the next 6 months.
Yeah.
By the way, I give you permission. I'm giving you officially permission to be successful and to go after all the dreams and all the things you want to do without any road blockages. Use my card, use my name, any way you want.
Awesome. Well, I sincerely appreciate that. And it's cool to see, too, because, my father-in-law is a very successful entrepreneur, and he's in his 50s. And, man, he's still opening up businesses left and right, and he's just, excited every day about it. So it's cool to kind of get to see that firsthand. But
Andrew, I think if that's the case, if you've got the luxury of that, then really I'll throw another curveball at you, or give you another thing to ponder. You got to try shit.
Yeah.
Like with making the trying the ROI, right? Like
sure.
The thing that I think has always worked for me is I make them win-win situations from the get. That I've decided that even the doing was the win. Thus, I'm almost numb to the outcome. The whole from experience or this and that. Like back to something that you and I cross over on. My first baseball card show, I wanted to pay $20 for the table. The whole way to the Phillipsburg Mall, me and my partners at the time, I had partners in 6th, 7th grade, like, we're gonna pay $20. We get there, some monster guy that looks like King Kong Bundy comes out, right? Some like big fucking 400-pound dude comes out, and he goes, "What?" And we're like, "We want a table. You got any?" And he's like, "Yeah, we got one more." Who knows if that's true? We go, "How much?"
It's always the last
yeah,
one.
he goes, "How much?" I go, "How much?" He goes, $120. I go, "We'll take it." And then he's like, "I'll bring the money tomorrow." And then we just like start walking out of the mall, and my friends are in a coma. You know, like $120 is like $1 billion. And I'm like, cool. But then I start being like, fuck. And I start getting nervous and like, you know, like, what am I gonna do? And like, I've got it, but like, that seems like a whole lot. It was a lot. And my dad, who I never talked to back then, to his credit, he says, it'll be, you know, it's gonna be worth the experience. And honestly, maybe from that day on, that has been a credo of mine. Everything I do, the second I decided to do it, I had already won. And whether it worked or not, the learnings or the upside of the execution were gonna be the KPI, ROI, the thing I was working towards.
Sometimes you get caught up on how much you're paying, not how much you can make. You know, I always used to get caught up with like how much we're paying, but then how much can we make on this thing? If you focus that much about how much you can make on it, as much as how much you're paying, sometimes you don't have to spend as much time on how much you're paying. You pay it because you can make a ton of money on the damn thing. And I've learned that the hard way with a bunch of players. I had David Wells for his perfect game, missed him by $2. Didn't talk to him for 5 years. Thought the guy was going to run over me in the parking lot. But have regained relationship with him now. But I learned from that, and that was a big get.
Yeah.
Almost went out of business because we didn't have him.
Yeah.
Because I had these perfect game pieces. I needed him to put them on it. But at the end, you learn. It's like, wait a minute. I was so caught up in the $2 because...
What is it, per sign?
Yeah, he wanted 35. I offered him 32. I'm like, should have just given him the goddamn money. But I didn't want to do it. Meanwhile, I could have made a ton of money on it. I wasn't focused on how much I could make. I was focused on how much I was going to pay him.
Of course. Interesting.
Stupid.
Andrew, thank you, brother. Hope you get some value out of this.
Appreciate it, man.
Take care.
Good luck.
All right, as we go to the next question. So, as a kid, what were you about?
Hustle.
Always.
Yeah, hustle. And I don't want to waste a second.
Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Brooklyn, Kings Highway, Ocean Parkway. Played sports. I remember going to my mother and said, I need a career change. I need something to change. I don't have time to play with my friends. And, she's like, you're 12. What are you talking about? Career change. And she's like, I said, I got to go. That's when I went and got the paper route. And I started delivering. The papers were cool. Other people were doing it, but I was delivering milk, bagels, everything. I fucking had 2 shopping carts.
You were like the Uber Eats of the 60s?
I was rocking. The old ladies, man, are like, how cute is this boy? He's so nice.
Yes.
I had to go 2 shopping carts a morning.
You're like, I'm super nice. 2 for 1 bagels, darling.
But after school, I was rolling. Then I bought so many bagels. The bagel guy hired me and taught me how to bake bagels. And bagels got hot with bagel notch and everything else. I can bake. Now, I know this, my daughter's going to kill me, but I invented the everything bagel. I just want to clarify
what did he
that
just
right
say?
now. I invented the everything
bagel.
Hold
on. This whole fucking episode has
just been...
Hold on,
that up right now.
What?
I invented the everything bagel.
I just want everybody to know.
Not Seth Godin, who has claimed that.
Seth Godin claims that too?
Seth Godin claimed that, but that was 10 years after me. I definitely did that.
Wait a minute. This is true. Now, first of all, I'm going to text Seth Godin. I'm going to bring you back and Seth, and we're going to debate who invented. So wait a minute. Both of you characters are claiming.
He has claimed that. I've read that, but I definitely went out with that.
Let's not worry about him for a minute.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
Brandon.
I'll tell you how.
No, don't tell me anything yet. You
invented the everything bagel. No question.
Jesus. This is huge. I'm excited about this.
There's no question.
This is what's called a win-win situation. Either I know the guy that invented the everything bagel, or we're going to get you.
I invented the everything bagel. And what's crazy is my kids and everything I've done. When friends come over, he goes, this is my dad, he invented the everything bagel. I'm like, I think I've done a few other things since then, but
Brandon, you are an all-time entrepreneur, an all-time sports entrepreneur, an all-time East Coast, my kind of style entrepreneur. If you did indeed invent the everything bagel, when you die, they're going to say, Brandon Steiner, the guy who invented the everything bagel has died today.
Everything bagel?
No.
I'm sitting there.
Okay, listen. We're gonna, you're done.
Do you understand
that you don't know American culture?
Do you understand, Gary?
Yes.
That when I take that job, the guy says he was the bagel factory on East 4th Street and Kings Highway. He starts baking at 4 in the morning. He says, would you mind coming to bake with me at 4 in the morning? You could then deliver your papers afterwards. I said, sure, I could do that. I go home. My mother says, I may be a little early. I mean, you got to go to school, deliver the papers. I got got it. Of course, I fell asleep in the middle of school and this and that. So I quit the paper route job, get this job. The night baker quits. I get this job for $1.75 an hour. Huge. I'm feeling rich.
That's a lot of money.
But there was nobody coming in the store at night. I was bored out of my mind.
What year was this?
73, 72.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
I always have my money stacked up on my dresser, so I'm bored out of my mind.
You were one of those guys who puts pictures on Instagram and shows their cash?
No.
You're the original douchebag Instagram guy?
No,
okay, just want to make sure.
But the mistake was putting that cash on my dresser because my brother always stole all the money.
I love
but
it.
anyway, I don't even care about
Brandon,
that.
real quick, who's
But by the
next
way,
on the call?
by the way, at night is when I invented the Everything Bagel because there was nobody coming in the store. So I figured, let me throw all these different seeds on it.
Brandon.
All right.
No. I'm asking you a real question.
Okay.
Obviously, you made an Everything Bagel back then. Do you believe
No, I was the first person I've ever seen that from. You got to remember, this factory in '73, there wasn't a lot of bagel stores. This is a route that delivered bagels everywhere, and the bagel Nazis hadn't started yet. This is early. I'm 12 years old. There wasn't a whole lot going on in bagel.
Let's get to the next call.
5 cents for a bagel, by the way.
See why dollar was the lot.
5 cents for a bagel. 5.
And a coffee was nothing. Quarter?
Nothing. But
less?
Coffee's not like it is now.
No,
anyway,
I know.
yeah.
How much was it?
I never drank a cup of coffee.
But you know how much it was sold for.
Probably a couple pennies.
Hello.
Slice of pizza, 15 cents.
Cody, it's Gary V. You're on the Ask Gary V show with Brandon Steiner.
Made a lot of progress here.
This is unreal. No, I'm very excited. I listen to you every single morning.
I appreciate it, my
man. On
man.
the way to walk to work, man.
Thank you, brother. What's your question?
So I'm just starting out a little business here. I'm basically just selling online clothes.
Okay.
And I'm doing videos. All the proceeds go toward random acts of kindness. So basically what I want to know is how do I find and afford a D-Rock in the very beginning stages?
Got it. So you're selling T-shirts, and all the profits then go into random acts of kindness, and you want to document that journey.
Absolutely, every step of the way.
Great. And what's your Instagram account?
Right now it's at rthlshop. At rthlshop.
R T. Yep.
H. L.
L shop.
Shop.
Great.
Yeah,
and where are you based?
You probably never even heard of it. Newfoundland, Canada.
I've heard of it, of course. I'm a hockey fan. Okay. Good news. You have an advantage in being in fucking bumblefuck Canada. Ready for it? Here it comes.
Yep.
2 kids are going to DM you right now and are going to do it for free. It's a done deal. Brandon is such a draw. There's plenty of people watching. There's 2 to 3 people right now who are literally, and maybe it's a month from now, maybe it's a week from now, I guarantee 2 or 3 people are going to DM you and be willing to do it to build their resume. 14-year-old Brandon and Gary are DMing you right now and saying, bro, I'll do it for free, because they want to put something on tape.
I love it. I want to tell you something.
Unreal.
That's what.
I love that you do that act of kindness. Every morning at Steiner, my assistant's here, Jake. We do 2 acts of kindness every day.
Why not 3?
We send 2 every day.
We do 0, but why don't you do 3?
We sometimes do. But we always do 2.
I love it.
We always do 2.
Every
day before
anything happens. Brandon, there's a caller here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my very first video, I just went into a coffee shop. I set up a camera. I anonymously just paid for people's coffee. And almost every single person wanted to pay it forward. And then my friend who was working messaged me 2 days later. And she said someone that I bought coffee for bought a large coffee for himself and then 5 large coffees for the next 5 people that came in, which I thought was pretty cool how people just wanted to pay it forward.
Dude, doing the right thing is always the right thing.
Dude, I'm contacting you tomorrow morning. I'm buying some T-shirts. You're first on my list tomorrow. I'm just telling you right now. You're first on my list tomorrow.
Awesome.
Cody.
I was at work
Cody,
today
do me a
too.
favor. Cody, hold on.
Yeah.
As soon as you get the order from Brandon, you need to email Gary at VaynerMedia, and I'm going to buy 1 more T-shirt than Brandon does.
Don't fuck with me.
I
may be buying a lot. You Facebook me tonight, right now, so I have all the details. I'll get the shit going tonight. And Gary, you're gonna have to pull your
Absolutely.
checkbook.
Britt, I've already trumped you. Like, it doesn't matter what you're gonna do. I'm gonna buy one more T-shirt than you, and so I don't know why you sent them to fucking Facebook, but it doesn't matter because
that's I go every night before I go to bed. I go to Facebook and check my messages out. That's why.
Cody, listen, you sold a bunch of
for me.
T-shirts. You got a free video photographers coming your way. Life is good today.
I'm on you.
Maybe when you buy the Jets, we'll get the symbol on the jersey, hey?
I mean, listen, let's not get carried away. I mean, like, I'm thrilled, but that's going to cost a lot of money.
He's dreaming.
Listen, I love the
dreaming
dreaming.
with you.
I appreciate it, my man. Good dude. All right, let's get another call. Brandon, you know, it's funny. I got to know you. I'm getting to know you more and more. You know what I like about you and what I really like about entrepreneurship a little bit? And I'm hoping it continues to build momentum, which is why I'm bringing it up right now. I like that people love it so much, they want to give back to the game. One thing I've always noticed from you is you always want to put on the young, like we see ourselves, right? It's cool.
I love it.
I love it too. You're really good at it.
I love when I see it in the kids too.
Of course, the
I
game.
just can't get
Matthew,
enough of it.
right? Like I've noticed that in you. Like you love that part of it, right?
I love the teaching. I love speaking.
Because it's sports.
Love it.
It's
I love
sports,
it.
right?
Love it.
Brandon.
Love the young entrepreneurship.
Matthew, it's Gary V. You're on the Ask Gary V show with Brandon Steiner.
Gary and Brandon, I cannot believe it, man.
Believe it, brother.
I'm sitting here, I've hit several different spots just waiting on live, man. It's great to finally talk to you guys.
No worries. Where are you from?
Austin, Texas.
Love it. What's your question?
You know, I've been grinding through the same industry for about 15 years. I love it. I'm passionate about it. It is not a sexy profession at all, but it is something that brings home the bacon, man. It feeds my family. It feeds me and other passions that I have. But it's not a 9 to 5. It's a sales job. I'm in it all the time. So I'm pursuing other passions, other wants, other ideas that I have. But again, I've listened to you talk about, hey, you need 6 hours of sleep and you need to grind on your second job, your extra job. But man alive, there's only so much I can do within a shortened period of time. And I've got to provide. I've got to provide for my family.
You're not wrong. So now let's get to the most interesting part. And
I'll continue to grind. I'll continue to do what I can when I can, as often as I can. And
I think that's the punchline, brother, right? Like life's about alternatives. Like, I think that's awesome that you're dealing with the practicality. And look, by the way, when I talk about 6 hours of sleep, you know, some people need 7, some people need 8, and that's fine. To me, as long as you feel good about what you're doing when you're on the field, right? As long as you feel good about your 14, 16, 17 hours, and don't forget, you got to fix the plane while you're flying it. Like, if you want to get out of the situation you're in, your only option, you only have one option. It is to grind in those 4, 5, 6 hours that you have, and it will take longer because you don't have 18 hours to just put it into this thing. The problem is you have no alternative. It sounds like you have responsibilities that you've made in your own head, financial responsibilities, emotional responsibilities, and you have to deliver on that, right?
Every day.
So I think what people have to understand is, so does everybody in some shape or form have a version of that, and you just got to navigate it the best you can and not be crippled by it, and try to be as successful as you can on those off hours to hopefully create that world where it switches over, where you can do that full time. Brandon?
I also think you just got to give yourself at least 30 minutes a day just to think about the possibilities and what if, and do a little daydreaming. Usually I do it while I'm exercising, but it's really important to give yourself time to just think about what if and daydream. I'm a master daydreamer. I like daydreaming when I'm walking and I just think about what if, because if you don't give yourself that time, it's difficult. You got to picture it. For me, I like to picture, like, wow, I'm gonna go and see. Like, I have this whole thing. I'm gonna do this whole thing with Obama. I want to do his first autograph signing. It's like my dream. I pictured it, what I'm gonna say to him, and I'm just working backwards. Sometimes you picture something, just work backwards, but give yourself the 30 minutes a few times a week at least to do that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Well, and I'm giving myself that time. I mean, I learned it from you, Gary, is give myself that time between, you know, I've got 3 little kids, you know, ranging from 8 to 2 years old, and they're, you know, them and my wife are my number one clients. They come first above everything else, but it's I'm passionate about the job that I have. I love helping other people achieve their goals. That's always been my number one goal. And it's trying to, at, you know, your age, Gary, I mean, I'm 42 years old. I got you by a couple of months. I'm trying to take that time to briefly become introverted enough to follow my dream, my passion, when I have time on somebody else may consider it like off time, man, but I just keep grinding. But I can't give up, and I don't want to give up.
You shouldn't.
The passion I have for the business that I'm in right now.
And listen, my man, if you're good, then you're good. The reason I try to get everybody to be selfish is the best way to be selfless is you're happy. And everybody's trying to, like, if you're making everybody else happy and you're miserable, you're gonna crack and you're gonna regret. And then you're not doing anybody any favors if you crack at 49 and blame everybody for your shit. Everybody makes their bed, sleep in it. You will never hear me complain about not having enough time with my kids or family because I'm making choices. I have friends who all they do is complain about not being with their family that have $100 million in the bank. I'm like, if you complain about that, then spend more time with the family. Then in reverse,
Absolutely.
all you have is people that complain about not having more, and they want it, but it's because they go to every single softball game and recital. You make your bed, and if you're happy, man, then you're good.
Yeah, no question. And also, you're in a great town, by the way, Austin.
What's that, my friend?
I'm sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Austin's got so many opportunities, so much growth. It's so vibrant. You're in a really special town. I mean, you know, Austin is just off the hook as far as its energy, the vibrance, the youth. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. You may need to kind of reset a little bit and rethink about some of the opportunities that may have pastors said no to you and go back and ask again. Things have changed a lot in Austin. You may want to go back to some of those things.
I want to go back to that. Were you saying that you're content but hungry? Is that where you were going?
I'm content with what I have. I've been in the mortgage industry for 15 years. Again, it's not sexy, and I love the company I work with, Axia Home Loans, but it's not everything that I know that I have a passion for. It's not every last thing that I know I've got rattling around in my head. It's hard for me to narrow the field of saying, okay, I've got so many thoughts, so many ideas of what I can do, not necessarily just in this industry, but in other things as well. I love what I'm doing, but I know that I have more potential.
Matthew?
I know that there's something else that I want to do.
Matthew?
Sir? Yes, sir.
You're not fully content.
Nor should you be.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. And or I'm going to throw you a completely different curveball. I would argue that I'm content, which would throw everybody for a curveball. But I am. Like, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm super content. Like, I'm content because I get to play my game, right? Like it's not that I need more. It's not that I need to buy the Jets tomorrow or be on more covers or have another great investment or $400 million for Vayner. My content part, I actually think I'm content. I actually would argue, Brandon, you're content because you're playing your game, right? And so, Matthew, the thing that I want people to understand is content versus I'm okay or I'm solid, but, you know, I feel like I'm content yet hungry because I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. If you listen carefully to the way you described it, I wouldn't call that being content. And it's okay to... Go ahead.
Let me throw this out. You were or were not content with just VaynerMedia before you went off to Vayner Sports and getting into music. There was something else that drove you that direction, some other want. It wasn't that you didn't love VaynerMedia. It was, is that it, or do you see other opportunities in doing something else?
Yeah, I think the key is don't be satisfied.
Yeah, that's a different
thing.
Be
content, but don't be satisfied. God, I love Steiner Sports.
Yeah.
I mean, my company, God, it's like my child, but I'm not satisfied.
Yeah, I think, listen, and you can get into semantics with these words. Here's what I would say for everybody who's watching. I'm just desperate for everybody to get in that zone. Like, look, anybody who watches my show or calls me is already different than me because I'm not doing that with anybody ever. And so for me, I'm always trying to think about that insight. What is it? Why have I gone to a place where I don't even talk to Steve Ross or anybody who's done it? I'm just so in my own insular place. What is it that I have there? What is it? Is it? By the way, it might not even be a strength. Is it a weakness? Is it that I'm? Is it? Do we all learn differently? I don't think it's some superpower. I'm always just trying to say, what is it? And it's what makes me know that I'm in a different place than a lot of people that consume my content. It doesn't make me better, it makes me different, and I'm trying to find angles to throw at you guys to bring you value. Make sense?
Love it.
Cool, my man. All right. We're going to see one more in. I know, Tyler, you're going to freak out, but I can't leave yet because I'm having too much with Brandon. How old is this book?
I think that's about 3 years old now, 2.5 years old.
Let's make sure we link up Brandon's book. Let's get his Amazon rank up. He'll be happy about that.
You can pick it up on SteinerSports.com.
He wants higher. Notice what Brandon did there. Very
Amazon.
sneaky thing.
Actually, I love Amazon. Don't take that back.
You're disrespecting the network effect. If your rank grows, you may actually sell more and actually then make more of a net. You're worried about how much. It's a David Wells 2.0 moment there.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I'm aware
I love Amazon. They've been very supportive. Other than that, go to Steiner Sports. It's just, yeah. But you know something, though?
Brandon, I think
the book business is a tough business. Yeah.
What? Chris? Brandon, I think I might have to do a signing with you. I might have to be the first entrepreneur to do a thing.
There's no question.
I think we just came up with a big idea.
There's no question. There's no doubt.
This is Chris.
Chris, this is Gary V.
What's up, Chris?
And you're on the Ask Gary V show with Brandon Steiner.
How you guys doing, man?
Super well.
Dude, I can't believe I'm talking to you. I'm sitting there just reposting, trying to get a hold of you. I'm a big fan of both of you guys. Thanks so much for
you made it. Where are you from?
On the show. The number one town in the United States of America, Charleston,
New York City?
South Carolina.
Sorry. Got it. Okay, Charleston, South Carolina. What's your question?
So I'm a sports psychologist, but I also dabble in politics as well. I was a sports psychologist out of college. I went to Cal State Fullerton, where there has the number one degree, master's degree, and undergraduate degrees in the country in sports psychology. I then was a coach in track and field in Connecticut for about 7 years and had about 50 All-Americans. Then New Haven became the 14th most violent city in America.
Yes.
So I left. I left coaching, got involved in community activism, started out as a volunteer, started out after a volunteer making $5 an hour, to where in 4 years I was running 4 states for Bernie Sanders in this last political campaign as a state director when he ran for president.
Understood.
And then I decided to get back into sports psychology and mental conditioning and do that for sports teams, kind of peppered across the country. But I'm really looking to try to find out a way to expand my business, because right now everything is word of mouth amongst the people that I've worked with. And I'm trying to really, get the Instagram game going. Do
you have money to spend on marketing, or are you going to have to go grassroots and organic?
Probably going to have to go grassroots and organic.
Well, then you're in the word of mouth business, and what you need to do is create content organically on these social networks that is shareable. So I would put out your best information for free on the internet, because that is the number one insight to how to get people to share your content.
Cool, that's what I'm doing. I'm creating a blog. Like, I have an article that goes out about once a week. I'm trying to work Instagram really hard. I put out a couple of things there. I've started Anchor. I've done podcasts.
Are you doing this full time?
Yes, because I still work with political campaigns, and that's the thing that really keeps everything running. And I'm also working on, pretty much nonprofit and political stuff is the thing that keeps my money coming in, but really sports psych is where I want to end up doing more of my time than politics.
So many people are going to be having this model. I'm going to say it one last time: fixing the plane while you're flying it. One blog post on your blog is probably not going to be enough volume to get to where you need to get to. 3 times a week on Facebook in full long form so people can share it is going to give you a better chance than one post on your blog that nobody's going to. So I think these are the subtle things of how I'm thinking about it. Do you see what I mean?
One quick thing also. What's the biggest sports team in your area?
Well, we're in Charleston. There ain't no big sports teams around.
College.
So I work with the College of Charleston, who I do work with. I work with their baseball organization.
All right, well, why not work with all their teams? That's more popular posts. You got the kids there, and to kind of help you as well to do those posts. Why not get more engaged at the school? Work with all those coaches and teams, and use that as a stepping stone to help you get with other teams outside of Charleston.
I mean, look, we can sit here for the rest of our lives and spitball ideas. How long have you been putting out the content on Instagram and your blog? Tell the truth, because we're going to double check, and if you lie, we're going to kill you.
really aggressively for about, I actually had your advice, Gary, and I had an intern for the fall of 2016.
Yep.
I kind of dropped off in the spring,
Yep.
but this summer I'm posting almost every day very aggressively, and it is helping. I am getting people DMing me from that
Yep.
and saying like I'm seeing your content.
Yep.
One day I had 50 new followers because I put up something that was pretty good.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to figure out a way. I think Instagram is really being a big help. Twitter too. People message me through there.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Love it. As long as you're pumped about this breaking out at 41 and you put it and you do exactly what you're doing for the next 6 years in a row, you're probably going to break out.
It's true.
That's
it takes
the plan,
time.
man. That's
it takes
the plan.
time.
That's it, man. Listen, the tactics matter. Watch what I'm doing. I didn't post that life and legacy post on Facebook in its really long form the other day for kicks and giggles. I'm a big believer that Facebook is the #1 place people should be blogging.
Okay, cool. That helps out a lot.
You
That
got
helps
it.
out a lot.
All right, man. Good luck.
I'll tell you a quick story. I
Go
started
ahead.
blogging. You know, I'm
Yes.
half illiterate. You know,
Yes, I can't
I'm
be
like,
too.
you know,
Yeah, we're the same. We
I
suck.
can barely read,
Yep,
right?
I can't read for shit.
You know, so I couldn't get 100 people on my blog.
Right.
I went and sent an email. I said, if you don't register my blog, I have about 100
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to fire you.
Yeah.
So
What
I got
happened?
100. That's how I got my first 100. And then I went around and said, listen, I appreciate that. I wasn't going to fire you, but could you please just tell one friend
Yeah.
that I got to 200?
Yeah.
Now we have a little over 100,000.
Is it in your signature
Um,
of your email? I believe the signature
That's
of
a
your
good
email
point.
is one of the
God
great
damn.
hacks of all
No,
time.
what-
You're constantly interacting on email. The signature
don't
of
do
your
that. You're
email
right.
is like a 1999 to 2004 hack that still is so outrageously
You
relevant.
still like the signature.
100%, because if you're a business person that's emailing all the time, it's fucking unbelievable. It's in there, and it's no different than, I update my URL in my LinkedIn all the time. In my Instagram, because I know a lot of people are clicking that. And every quarter, once a year, I change my signature for, I have a sneaker coming out. I'm sure I'll link to that. Or if I have a book Crushing It, the follow up to Crush It comes out in January. That will go into the
You
signature.
have an autograph line.
You know,
we got to do an
exactly.
autograph
We
line.
gotta do
with you.
something.
A
Brandon,
bat. I think it's a
Brandon,
bat.
let's do this.
It's a bat.
Let's start talking behind the scenes. Let's come up with the first signature concept for an entrepreneur with Steiner Sports.
I think it's a bat.
Well, we need to look. It
So
needs to be
hold on,
authentic.
Crushing It,
No, but
bat.
hold on. Don't
No?
force anything on me, okay? Let's have a
was
creative.
suggesting.
Okay, good. A creative collaboration. I think it needs to be like a Russian sickle. You like that one, Jake? That was the first time I think
That's
I got
so
you for
rare.
real.
Is that random?
I was born in the Soviet Union.
But-
Most Americans don't know what a sickle is. Jake's educated. He does. D-Rock had no fucking clue. Okay. What is it, D-Rock? Yeah, okay, good job. All right. Nonetheless, Brandon, thank you
You
for being on the show,
enjoyed
man.
this? Yeah, it's a
I enjoyed
pleasure,
this.
man.
Brandon,
Thank
ask the
you.
question of the day. Any question you want. You get to ask the Vayner Nation a question.
What's your favorite moment? The moment that you'll never forget, the moment you want passed down to your kids. What's the moment that you cherish and you just puts a smile on your face?
When the Jets beat the Patriots in the second round of the 2011 play, I went with Jake's dad. I'm going to produce every goddamn episode. It's still the greatest moment of
I
my
love
life.
hearing people's sports moments, their
Yeah.
favorite
You
moment.
want,
no matter
you
how
want
trite.
life or you want sports?
I like the sports moment.
Okay, so you're
even no matter
clarifying
how
it.
trite,
So
whether-
it's sports.
Yeah, I love your
Okay.
favorite
Yeah.
sports moment.
Okay.
Whether it's your kid getting that first.
Yeah,
hit.
don't talk about your kid being born or
Yeah.
you getting into the
Or
school
you got
or
married.
getting the job with Gary Vee. Don't do that. Make it. It makes the top 100. Yeah. They don't have everything bagels in Sweden.
I don't know what the fucking everything bagel.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh boy,
Brandon, thanks
that's
for being on
Mickey
the show.
Mantle. You're losing me, kid.
Well, by the way, we're gonna really figure out if you
Appreciate
invented it.
This is hot.
You
Thank
keep
you.
asking questions. We'll keep answering them. Hey guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode of the Gary Vee Experience. Now go out and share this, pass it on. Let me know what you thought. Hey guys, it's Gary Vaynerchuk, and this is the Gary Vee Audio Experience. So I've been thinking a lot about my content lately, and really my YouTube, Daily V specifically, this interesting vlog concept I have for documenting for the next 20, 30 years of every day of my professional career. And how fun it is that, my grandkids will look at it, and when I'm 68, I'm like, oh man, I used to have hair, like cool, like just all those fun things. But there's a little bit of a more interesting thing going on that I'm fascinated by, which is the pressure I put on my community to watch what I'm doing, not what I'm saying. the comments that happen every single day, which is one of two, which is, I'm out of here, Gary, thank you, I got it. Or, first time checking in 4 months because I've been doing, thank you so much. Oh, by the way, I forgot how good your content is. Maybe I'll mix it back in. But it really led to an interesting question that somebody asked me last week in the south of France when I was on business. They were like, you should be so much bigger. Your numbers should be so much bigger. And I looked at them and I said, look, do you really care about your numbers or do you care about the impact, right? Like influencers, do you care about having 1 million followers, or would you rather sell, $1 million worth of product or get $1 million worth of sponsorship? One of the things I'm really trying to achieve is the biggest impact, biggest legacy, biggest brand, not the biggest amount of subscribers. To me, the ironic thing is if I'm doing my job well, my numbers can't grow that big. My views cannot grow that big. My engagements cannot grow that big because really I'm just rotating, right? I, unlike so many other people, I watch carefully, and a lot of people are building content that isn't really providing value. It's kind of appeasing. It's the Band-Aid. It's not actually the solution. And it's almost kind of difficult for me to watch from afar because all it's doing is creating a self-fulfilling prophecy just for the content producer. It's never really allowing the person to graduate and go do their thing. In reverse, I'm the other way. First of all, 25% of the people that first consume a piece of content of mine hate me and want me out because I'm so focused on the truth. I'm trying to pressure you into doing you. I want you to see it. I want you to look at the things that you don't want to look at, which is the only excuse is there is no excuse, right? Like it's not somebody else's fault. It's not that they ripped off your idea. It's not that this, that, or the other thing. It's you. And the second you go there and figure out it's you, everything starts to kind of change, right? And that's difficult to see when when deep down you're self-aware enough to know, I'm not putting in the work. I didn't really do the studying that needed to be. I'm not willing to pay the price. I like to be on the couch. Right? And so, so first of all, I can only get so big because 25% are out from the get. And then another 25% after 3 to 6 months really, really, really get it and go all in, right? And that only leaves me with 50%, of which are just still not there yet and still need my crutch and just this and that, or are just looking at me for entertainment purposes, like genuinely just like it. It's interesting. It's fun. They treat me like the Jets, right? Which is, it's escapism. It's a nice 20 minutes on the vlog. It's a nice thing to have in their Instagram feed. It's fun. It's not a crutch. It's not an excuse to not do. It's just literally entertainment. And entertainment that's valuable, which is it's got a chance to give you another tidbit as you go into the 201 level, the 301 level, the 401 level. And so I guess at the end of the day, I'm genuinely like putting this on audio so it's here forever so that people don't think I Monday morning quarterback it when I'm 72. Like I'm going for the greatest impact, not the most subscribers on YouTube or the most followers on Instagram. And as a matter of fact, in a very self-aware moment, my content will never allow me to be one of those most followed people in the micro. In the short term, I've got no shot. Just curious how it looks in 2043. We'll see all of you in 2043. Go do you. Go do you. Guys, thanks so much for listening to the audio experience. It would mean the world, and I mean the world, if you could go and leave a rating on iTunes. Your word of mouth is my oxygen. Hey guys, it's Gary V, Nerd Chuck, and this is the Gary V audio experience. Well, great. Hey guys, how are you? Awesome, cool. So this is actually always one of my favorite things I do every year. Hope the internship is going well. I know it's coming to an end probably for some of you as we're getting late into the season. But I'd really love to just do a massive Q&A session with you guys about anything and everything that's kind of going on in my world. I know some of you reached out and I've spent a little time, but for the rest of you, it's a good opportunity to jam a little bit. Yeah, I mean, honestly, let me talk about a couple things real quick, and then I think we'll just open it up right away. Obviously, this has been a more fun year for interns for me for a couple reasons. One, because that piece of content I put out about engaging with other people, and I feel like so many of you have taken that energy, and I hope that's been ROI positive. Just to ground anybody who hasn't seen it, like the only thing I think an internship is about is actually meeting the people in the company that you work at, and I just think that's actually just genuinely true because information is just being commoditized so much like whether, definitely all of you have had completely different internships based on the serendipity of who you've been matched up with, and some people have gotten their hands really, really dirty, and others probably not as much, given even like, it's not even almost about the people that you're under, it's about where the account or the work is at that moment, right? If you were put into a situation where the account's on fire and there's issues, they're gonna be a little more scared to let you like do your thing because they're scared shitless to just make sure it doesn't get fucked up. And then other places where it's really, really good, I'm sure plenty of autonomy considering the circumstance, but then you actually have the variable of the people too, and if they're micromanagers or not. So that to me is why the practicality of like, I'm gonna learn a craft this summer is ludicrous, because there's too many things that are not in control of that being the situation. Hence why I think it's about the people, and plus, in reality, anything you would learn in 6 or 8 or 10 weeks, you're gonna learn in the first 90 days of a job, whenever the fuck you get it. So like, that's why, if you're still here and you still haven't like gotten serious about my point of view on this, you better find yourself in the cafeteria as much as possible, or wherever else you can get there, and whatever other, the other offices have the luxury of being smaller. Like for everybody who's on the screen right now, there's literally no excuse. Maybe LA is a little bit bigger, but and London's gonna, but nonetheless, I don't think there's any excuse for New York, let alone, definitely not, Nuga. And so definitely should make sure you meet as many people as possible. And that to me stands out. I think the other thing is, I think it's super important to bet on your strengths. I hope that this internship, or what you're up to doing when you leave here and back in the fall, I highly, highly recommend betting on your strengths. It's something that I've talked about for a long time, and it's something that I'm believing in even more than ever now. The world is becoming so fast-paced and so niched out and so much going on that it's just very obvious to me that the people that are winning are the ones who are comfortable staying narrow and deep and reverse engineering either one of two things. The thing that you disproportionately love the most, but you self-recognize that you're just okay at it, and then you've got to pay the price for that. AKA, you love writing and you just want to be a copywriter, but deep down in your heart, especially if you deploy real self-awareness, you know that you're just slightly above average, which you have to understand plays itself out in life. Like eventually the market's gonna judge you. And what that means is you may never become a chief creative officer or even a CD because you're just average at it. However, you just love it so much that it's the only thing that you wanna do, and it's how you breathe. It's why I was such a bad student. I loved what I loved so much, I was willing to pay the sacrifice and the consequences of being judged a loser and like fighting society for like my entire childhood, because I just couldn't breathe without thinking about selling baseball cards or selling wine or whatever I was up to at that time. You've got to make a pretty interesting decision, in my opinion, for extreme success in life. Either A, you love something so much and you're okay with being averagely successful in it, but the ROI is your general happiness in what you do, and then you'll figure out how to pay your bills, or maybe your spouse will pay the bills, or whatever the fuck life plays out. Or you realize that you're really special at something, and maybe it's the second or third thing you like the most, but you know that that's where your success will come in and you'll go all in on that. Or you're outrageously blessed, and honestly I think that's what I am, which is the thing that you naturally love the most is actually coinciding with the thing that you're best at, and then you get to live one of those lives. But tricking yourself that you're the third is the quickest way to lose. And that is basically the punchline of a professional life, in my opinion, at its most basic sense. And I think that's something that you should really try to figure out, big time, because it's basically how people end up being happy or not. So that's my motivational spiel on that. But it really makes a lot of sense to me. That's something I've been thinking a lot about, and doing back, it's easy to be Monday morning quarterback. I'm like, oh, that's how I got here. Oh, that's how they got here. Oh, that's how they got there, right? So at this point where you're questioning everything, and you're still, so many of you are still in that place where you're just checking the box of what the right thing to do is, because that's how you've been trained for the last 20 years of your life. This is exactly the time to start debating it, for real. Because you wake up and you're 32 real quick. Right? We're just sitting in, this is Eric Kastner, he helped me build Wine Library. We were just sitting in a small cubicle 5 seconds ago building this website. So it happens real quick. Right? So, cool. Who's got questions? And you can go anywhere, like detailed, philosophical in the air like I just went, random shit.
I think everyone's got questions. They did a good job of preparing questions.
Cool. So let's go, we'll go, you know what? Fuck this. We always do it this way. We're going here first. Let's go. Nuga, you go first.
All right, so my question here was, what is your least favorite thing about Vayner right now, and what are you doing to fix it in the next 6 months to a year?
One more time, brother.
What is your least favorite thing about Vayner right now, and what are you doing to fix it in the next 6 months to a year?
There's a ton. There's so many things that just popped in my mind that are fucked up. So that was funny. My least favorite thing is that my open door policy became exactly the same thing that our unlimited vacation policy became, which is I had incredibly good intent with it, but because of the openness of it, it got fucked up. So our unlimited vacation policy, there were so many people, the best people in the company took no time, and the losers took unlimited time. And so so then we created forced 2-week vacation time and unlimited behind it. My open door policy of everybody coming to me and I can solve things is unrealistic because I'm the CEO. On top of it, I'm a CEO who has personality in the world now. I become disproportionately intimidating to come and randomly talk about the fact that Karen is a jerk or Rick is holding me back. And so now what I'm gonna do to fix it is in 2018, I'm running the math now, I'm gonna force myself to meet with every single employee every 6 months. Which is, yeah, it's gonna take a lot of time, as you can imagine, but the only vulnerability this company has from complete and utter domination is people's cynicism to what I give a shit about. And unfortunately, it's real, right? Like, unfortunately, a shockingly small percentage of this company believes me. I think most are somewhere in neutral trying to figure it out. And I feel like a good amount don't believe me at all and think it's all a front and I care about the money, which is stupid. Because if you had a half a brain, you'd realize how unprofitable this venture is right now for me with all the options I have. But it is what it is, so I want to fix it, and I will.
Cool.
All right, London? London?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Cool. I've got two, probably real quick. One, you've given a lot of thought into your funeral that you want everyone to attend.
I do.
Have you ever given any thought into how you want to die?
I have. I've thought a lot about this actually. And it's cliche, you know, it's funny, it's the first time I've ever said out loud and taken it out of my brain into my mouth, and now I'm laughing at myself because it really is so typical. I think we're all typical of like we are what we are, right? These are two very polar opposite reactions, they're both true. The reason when I was sleeping had no fucking idea, see ya. But weirdly, I'm equally into like, I got caught in some terrorist attack and like everybody's freaking out and they're like, oh fuck, Gary Vee died in it. Like, it's gotta be one of those two. Like really, really, really quiet, like no pain, simple, like honestly the way I think probably is the best way to go, right? Or like, fuck, like how unfortunate that he died from that because he had more to do, so. Yeah, that's it. That's the answer.
Yeah. Cool. I have another question real quick. I have a bit of a side hustle. One of them is I design a lot of t-shirts, kind of like this one.
Yep.
In my downtime and in my evenings and weekends, I have been doing some more Vayner-inspired designs, just fun kind of things. What's the quickest way to just get that in front of you? Just
email.
Get your eyes.
Email. I'll look at it. Yep. I'll look at it the next time I fly, which is Monday. Cool.
Right.
Awesome.
Cheers, man.
Cheers. All right, LA?
I got questions.
Go ahead.
Can you guys?
Yeah.
What's up, Gary?
Hey, man.
Pretty into your K-Swiss project, as I'm sure you probably know.
I'm aware. That was a nice long email you sent.
From you. Yeah. We can't hear you right now.
Oh, you can't? Why?
That little part went in and out.
How about now?
You're good.
Okay. I was saying I'm super aware because you sent a really long fucking email.
Alright, I'm sorry.
No, I love it.
I was just wondering from you, like, who you think it will actually most resonate with, and who do you hope it will resonate with, and if those two kind of align, or if it's completely different, or just your take on that.
So to ground everybody in the conversation, I'm coming out with a K-Swiss sneaker in November, like legitimately a Gary V sneaker. And to be very honest with you, this is just a truth, and I like to stay in the truth lane. I haven't really thought about it. The only reason I'm doing it is because it's a win-win situation. Either it does really well with all the people that now live on Instagram, which is every single 16 to 25-year-old dude, right? For the most part, in my audience, and a small percentage of female, who it's gonna resonate with because it's gonna be like, bless you, oh, this is Gary V's sneaker, that's funny, that's cool, that's interesting, oh, K-Swiss is retro, da-da-da. It goes on fashion trends, which is, we're seeing so many brands reemerge quickly. But I haven't really thought about like who I want it to resonate with or who I think it's gonna resonate with, because it's not why I did it. I did it purely selfishly around two core things. One, if it works. If the sneaker really sells well, I forever have the history of being the entrepreneur that got put on the way that, you know, Jordan with Athlete and Yeezy with like music, like that's huge legacy. If it fails miserably, it's an incredibly fun, self-deprecating inside joke for me and my friends of like, remember when I had the audacity to think I could have a sneaker? So it's just a win-win situation. And ultimately, like, honestly, ultimately that's what I wish for you. Like, I'm fundamentally unbeatable in life because no matter what, this is true.
I know. That's why I'm laughing though, like, and I also believe that you're unbeatable in life.
Well, I'm unbeatable in life because I just genuinely think both outcomes are good. I just genuinely think like the success of something is good and the failure is good. Because if I fail, I deserved it. Like if this venture I came up with or this job I took or the decision I made or the investment I made failed, well then I deserved it. Like, it's 100% equal because it's actually taking yourself and your feelings out of the equation and letting meritocracy in the market judge, right? Like, I just think I deserve it. And I also know that I'm good enough. I think it's also about just confidence in general. Like I'm just good enough to survive anything. I'm not doing anything that's betting my whole family's life on it, right? And I just genuinely don't care what other people, like the biggest problem you have right now is you have two, especially at this age, you just care about what other people think. As you should at some level, but not for your life decisions that, you know, you have to understand this is why people regret. And regret's scary. It's not scary at 20, it's super scary at 70. And that comes fast too. You know, so like, yeah, so that's the K-Swiss story. It was one of those scenarios where it was a complete win-win. Like, it's just all upside in extreme ways. Like, cool. Anybody else in London? I know we hung out, so we had our own little sesh. So I'll probably go to New York in a second, but sneak one in real quick.
Okay, so you know, we saw your trip to Hong Kong. You know, after that trip, what is it about Asia that you want to target?
Asia feels to me like social media felt or the internet felt. It's just new territory, right? And it's so right. And the entrepreneurial spirit there is so real and it's raw and it's got a little bit more of a, you know, it's a little dirtier. Like, you know, it's a little more raw form of entrepreneurship. Like the rules are a little bit more street than America, which is a little bit more mature. Like people are willing to fuck you in like a way that you aren't accustomed to in the US, which I love. I'm comfortable in that environment, and so it just fits me well. I think that culture even has a bigger problem of trying to appease their parents, so I have some real energy to try to help. As much as I'm trying to help you guys, I'm really in here like trying to help. Like I'm hopeful that somebody here really listens to me for the next hour and actually does something that they won't even realize how, like I realize for straight truth how much I can change your life right now. I mean it. Like, and it's not because I'm special or anything, it's because I'm gonna be forceful of what I'm telling you right now, and that may make you like make a decision that you wouldn't have otherwise, and it's big stakes. I don't think people realize it. Like there's 3 to 4 core decisions you're about to make that will basically be the reason your life is your life. Now, you can pick the perfect spouse, the perfect job, and those decisions led to you actually getting hit by a car and dying. So like it's not like, there's nothing guaranteed, but there's just a lot of ways to put things in your favor. So yeah, that's what I felt there. It was instantaneous too. It's fun. D-Rock's not here. It was really weird. Oh, sorry, D-Rock. So D-Rock, tell them. What? The baggage claim.
Oh yeah, we walked into Hong Kong. He let them in right away. I didn't have my camera out, and he was like, "I love this place."
Like for real, like literally wasn't out of baggage claim, and I could literally taste it. I knew how it was gonna play out. I could feel it running through my body. It was super weird, but like super common for me. So, and not something, you know, it's been funny. I've always wondered if I've tried to fabricate it before, like the feeling, because my brain was telling me it was good, and I've never been able to do it. I've never, like, I know I'm tricking myself, right? Trying to pretend this is gonna be big, because I want it to be, but I don't feel it. But there, I felt it, like literally in baggage claim, you know? Which meant I hadn't even seen it yet. I was just breathing the air. So, cool. All right, go ahead.
What valuable business is nobody building?
So many. There's unlimited amounts of businesses that are valuable. I think the businesses that aren't being built right now are sitting in people's heads as problems for themselves, but they haven't manifested it out of their head into action, because the best businesses are the ones that are pain points to individuals, scratching your own itch of your problem. And I think you guys are, the reason young people create so many great businesses is because you have new pain points because of how the land, has changed. So I don't know what they are because I'm not 20 with it under this new reality, but you are. And so I think the best businesses are people that go through transitions, can taste some sort of issue, and then have the audacity and the courage to fix it. So that's the right answer, more so than something like, hey, you should sell bananas, Of
course. So when I watch your content, and you speak more in general terms, not
yes.
tactical advice,
yes.
But when you speak in these like overarching
yes.
generalizations of like perspective.
Which is the majority of what I put out.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to put out tactical. First of all, I'm unbelievably non-tactical, and in general, tactical is so available. Like every single, I hate when people are like, Gary Vee, enough with this motivational shit. Tell me what to do. I'm like, fuck face, go to YouTube and search it. Like every single fucking question you have in details on YouTube for free, in detail, in visual form. Sorry.
So like when you speak in those general terms,
yes.
Everything makes sense and it fits into a narrative. It seems like you have like a bulletproof, perfect perspective and approach to life. But like, can you talk about how you get into like actual messy situations in life and you have like moral contradictions, or like trying to take that like this perspective that you built up and apply it to the like highly specific situations you encounter that like it doesn't really make sense in that context?
Yeah, I think it happens every day, right? I think that's happening every second, especially when you add the word moral. Like basically, when you're in a position of power, you have leverage to deploy non-moral behavior and get away with it. So, I think it's to me, it's how I navigate my life. Like it's the thing I'm most proud of. I'm most proud that this company runs on unbelievably ugly margin because I try to make moral decisions on how we handle things, and that still doesn't work from an individual perspective standpoint, because when you fire somebody, no matter what you've done, you're a dick face, right? But so I think that how it manifests, here's how it manifests. Every single thing that happens in my life, I try to be the bigger man in, because I feel like I'm capable of absorbing the loss. So one thing I finally have started talking about, it's funny to have Eric in the room. One thing I finally have started talking about in the last 2 weeks is that I own 0% of Wine Library, right? It's something that I've never talked about. Like most people don't realize that I own nothing of Wine Library. But the reason I'm starting to talk about it is as I'm getting more popular, the thing that's emerging is there's one excuse left on the table, which is daddy put me on, right? And so like everybody's excuse of me not, them not being like me or working as hard or willing to do what I did is, no, Gary, first of all, it's amazing how these things manifest. First, it's you were given $3 million, which is not true. Next, it was the business was $3 million, but every business is different. It was doing 10% gross profit. Eric was there. It was a tiny 10% gross profit.
Oh, okay.
So that means $300,000 in profit before expenses. Eric, how much were you paid first year as a developer? 40, 30? Like, couldn't pay anybody. If the economy hadn't collapsed, Eric would have never worked there as a developer. He'd already gone to San Francisco to start his career, but the world melted, you know, the dot-com world. So that's a big thing for you guys to learn from. When the economy's good, everything feels like you're going to Silicon Valley and you're working. When the world melts, you end up being in a fucking basement of a New Jersey liquor store. Be careful out there. So, you know, it's really, really just super interesting, right? Like, I treated that situation with a moral compass. My dad and mom are my heroes for bringing me to, you know, to the US, and so I built my dad's business for him. I left and started VaynerMedia with no equity value in my life. I built an enormous business, and I left with no equity value whatsoever. I was worth nothing. And I was getting paid $70,000 a year, $90,000. I was not making, I was making nothing. I was 34 years old. I built a huge business for my dad. I left with nothing, started this, gave AJ 50% of it when I had all the leverage, and get made fun of publicly all the time for being put on. What I'm saying very simply is I deploy it every day. In the way I hire, in the way I treat people, in what I invest in. Like, that is why it's so simple. It's basic, it's binary. Either you're a good person or you're not. Now, we all have shortcomings. Like, humans have plenty of shortcomings. I believe that if you have unbelievable intent to not act on them, and you do the best you can, that's really just the best you can end it up being. You know what I mean? Like, I've made unbelievable amounts of mistakes. I hate confrontation. I do think that I've historically blindsided people, like support, fired, or not part of your team because I didn't like the confrontation. Like, so I've evolved and tried to be better, but.
I guess my real question would be like, does the voice in your head that informs your self-awareness just go like, dude, like, I don't know.
No, this is a good question. What?
Like, does the voice in your head that like informs your self-awareness, do you ever just look at a situation and go like, I have no idea? Like,
no.
Never.
Is everything like baggage claim where you like feel it somehow? Like you feel what you should be doing?
I think wrong and right's real simple. To be very frank, I think we tune out that voice. So I've never really been drunk in my life, like 6 times. I think that all of you guys use alcohol as an excuse to do shit that you want to do, but you know you shouldn't. Or to justify shit you're doing amongst other people that you think, you know, you want to look in front of, and like you want to justify why you hooked up or why you were ridiculous. And that's the gateway drug to approval of getting away with it. It's your pass card. The reason I'm so out there as a person is I'm not scared. Twice. I'm not scared about your judgment of me, and I'm doing it really well. So it works. Got it?
So you're talking about like the profitability. Do you see that as a fault to an extent?
No, I see it as a strength.
Why is that?
Because I'm able to invest into the culture and people for the long-term output. The reason I've grown 2 businesses unbelievably fast by the standards of that industry is because of that. I think people want to take money home, and I don't. I mean, I do-ish, but not to give up the long term, right? I need something to survive. You know, your world changes. Like Eric's shaking his head because he knew when I was 28 years old and built a huge fucking business, I lived in a shit fucking apartment in Springfield, New Jersey.
And you worked in the shittiest office possible with all of us.
Yeah, I mean, look, like the thing that I know that people don't know is, like, I wouldn't buy my truth. So why would I expect you guys to? But it's real. It's super fucking real. I worked every fucking minute. You know? So no, I think it's a strength. I think, and I don't put myself in a position to owe anybody anything. Like, I'm not public. I don't have partners that have leverage, right? So when you get to invest, you have something. I actually think the biggest weakness all of you will have is when you get into any level of money, you'll buy dumb shit instead of saving it, investing it, and then not realizing that at 34 you could have so much more and you won't even remember the dumb shit you had at 26. That if you literally took that money and put it into Facebook and Amazon and just sat pat, that you would just have a lot more money. Like when Google went public, Eric made his uncle, I think, or aunt or somebody buy it, but like, and he was making no money and had no money, but like even so, whatever he bought, he should have still put into Google because he was right. You know? And you gotta invest early. If you invest early and you invest stuff that you never have to touch, like the reason people lose in investing is it's their actual money. So instead of putting in a bank for their rent or college loans, they put into the market, and then the market dips and they panic and they take it out and they lost money. But the reason Warren Buffett's the richest is you basically need America to collapse, which then you've got bigger problems than to not invest in the market in America and just never think about that money. It's actually stunningly basic. So like literally if you have money right now, you should invest it into Amazon or Facebook and like all of it and never think again. Now you should probably diversify it, that's the right way to think, but I just know those two companies aren't going anywhere.
So I have like a people and culture question. I guess it's a two-part question, but obviously you've hired and fired so many people over your careers.
Yes.
Including high-level management positions.
Yes.
So over time, like what are some traits that you see consistently from these higher level positions in managerial roles that make them successful, and then vice versa?
I'll give you the answer right now. Selfish, selfless, the end.
Selfish and selfless?
Selfish is losing, selfless is winning. The end.
Okay.
The reason people get fired here at a very high level is because they're protecting their jobs. And everything out of their mouth and what they do is based on that. They've hit their apex, they know it. They know they're not good enough either for it or above it. They know it. And instead of being appreciative that they're a part of a fast growing company and are probably a level or so above what they should be, they go on the defense and try to kill everybody around them to not take that job.
Is that all levels or just high level?
That's usually higher levels, because when you're at this level, you're not protecting shit, you're trying to grow, right? So you're young, you're trying to grow, but then when you hit your spot, you go on defense because you're happy to make $130 a year, work for somebody you believe in, work in a good place, you like your office, you got rent, you got mortgages, you're about to start a family, like you just want that 130, you're good. You're like, this is what I want. And so you go on defense. You're not thinking about going to 216. That's the norm. That's somebody who works in a company. And that's fine, but there's a better version of that, which is recognizing that truth and trying to defend against that so you don't become vulnerability. The problem is that works in most places. The reason companies suck is because the defense works. When we're at our worst, we're being too slow to kick out the people that are doing that here. I can list 7 people in my brain right now who are doing it for a million different reasons, whether it's the person above them, below them. There's somebody who's not fired right now because the person underneath them that they're blocking is so good, but needs to grow a little bit thicker skin, and I'm letting it play out so that she gets a little more thicker skin so she's more successful in the future. I could lose that game. I have. It plays out with her quitting, but I'm willing to play that chicken. But that's the shit that nobody thinks about. Like that's not the kind of thing you're thinking about in your head. Like that's not how my team thinks about it. Nobody. That's how I think about it because that's my job at the ultimate last spot. But that's the binary answer to who's winning and losing.
Alright, so, well, first of all, I just want to say, like, I know how grateful you are, and I'm a really grateful person, and so that's something that really motivates me, just seeing how successful you are, knowing that being grateful is like one of like your main values.
It's a great energy, man.
So, like, yeah, I really appreciate that. It's just like period. Like, just want to get that away. But then also, what is like your everyday mindset, and how much do you think that contributes to like your overall success?
So I talk a lot about macro patience, micro speed, and I think that's my everyday mindset. My everyday mindset is like fucking, I mean, you know how I play basketball, you know, like that's my mindset, man. I'm trying to win, I'm trying to go fast, I wanna make every second count, I wanna impact, I wanna get shit done, I wanna keep the ball moving down the field, I wanna take care of all the fires, like every day is fires, every day is fires. Like it's real, the biggest problem about being the ultimate boss in anything, if you guys decide to do that one day, is it sucks. I don't know what else to tell you, it's just all negative. Which is why optimism or gratitude is really kind of one of the only ways to pull it off. A healthy way to pull it off, right? I think other people pull it off, but they burn out, they jump out of a window, they have like bad lives. The healthy way is just utter blind optimism, because the truth is, there has not been one day that I haven't dealt with like some pretty fucked up shit that sucks. Losing a client, inner issues, market conditions, like there's just so many forces against you. Your internal, your external are your clients and the market. I figured out 4 years ago that I had this all won, that no agency was gonna beat us, and then all of a sudden the Vices and the Refinery 29s and the BuzzFeeds came up, and I'm like, fuck, they're building agencies within them, and they've got $800 million in funding. That's gonna fucking blow, right? So there's always something, you know? If I was still in the wine business, like one day Amazon buys Whole Foods and now has 44 licenses. Like that's not gonna be good for the liquor industry. So, that's my mindset. Like squeeze the shit out of every minute of every day. But at a macro, be patient, right? So Wine Library was just like every day, right? But I wasn't getting paid a lot. I was thinking long term. I was thinking it as a foundation. I left it with nothing, you know? So that's how I think about it. But gratitude's a good one, man. If you're truly pure about it, like if you're not trying to manifest it the way I try to do things, if it's really, really, really in you, you've actually, I think, fundamentally won life. You know how we're gonna start being chemically like viruses being injected into us? When that happens, you'll all see it. Make sure you line up first for gratitude. They'll fix almost everything else. It really will. Just think about it. I basically don't complain about shit. I just don't see it. Cause I can paint you a picture of, especially looking around this room, I've been imagining this ranking board of 7 billion people plus, 8 billion people. I just wish you could see where you rank. I wish. You know how humbling that would be? Imagine we actually had that, like literally like the 8th millionth ranked person, the worst is like somebody who's probably in a cage right now somewhere, right? Like some fucked up, like I would love for you to see your actual ranking. You would be flabbergasted, you know? And all of a sudden, like, and obviously there's a lot of minorities and women in this room, and it's all true. It's just not true in the macro. Not in America. Meaning there's just still too much opportunity. The internet in itself eliminated like old white dudes' control, you know? It's huge, it's fucking huge. Got it.
So earlier you mentioned.
You guys hearing this well? Just want to check in. Great.
So yeah, earlier you mentioned that in Hong Kong they'll fuck you like they won't in America.
Yeah.
Like in what way?
So because laws are just like, well, Hong Kong's different. It's more London, US. But if you go into mainland China, there's so much communist undertone still. Like you're just able to, like laws here and the judicial system and the business practices are just mature, right? Like there's a lot of people that I know who've done business there who've like had purchase orders, they're confirmed, you're gonna get your product, and then you don't have your product, and then you call them and you're like, where's the product? And they're like, yeah. You know? And there's a ruthlessness, there's a hunger that, you know, you have to understand, America's now well in its empire, we're deep into our empire years, right? You guys are now often, not always, often the third generation of good, solid stability. You're just not as hungry as your grandparents were. You're super fucking fancy compared to your grandparents. The end. And that's it. So you're soft. The end. So they're not as soft there because the majority of them are first generation and trying to get, you know, they're just coming out of communism. So they're gonna take your money, you know? That's really it. It's just kind of that vibe, you know? There's a level of ethics in US business where even above and beyond the contract, people care about their reputation and their word to some level. There's plenty of full of shit people. There's just a lot more in a lot of Asian countries that are just don't give a shit. If they made a deal and then an hour later something comes along that's better, they're selling your pots and pans to that person. And that's just common. And that will evolve. And in 2 generations, when China's #1, those kids will be soft. And then Africa's gonna kill them. just the game. The key for you guys is like how hungry and like, this is all about like the game, right? Like this doesn't mean like that's bad. As a matter of fact, one would argue that you may end up having that great era where you guys might get the era that was fully matured, you know, first world problems, good solid run, but eventually this whole, like America loses. It's just the way it is. And I don't think people think that way. And to me, I think the way America loses is because of the technology revolution, because everything gets evened out, right?
Yeah, so something that's interesting to me is that you are a Russian immigrant who grew up in Jersey.
Yes.
And I was wondering because I feel like you're very relevant across different communities and different worlds and cultures.
Yes.
You're relevant in San Francisco, you're going to Hong Kong.
Yes.
You're at the Breakfast Club.
Yep.
You're in the studio of one of the ASAPs, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the great, I never realized it, but going to Mount Ida College, in hindsight, is gonna end up being a really remarkable advantage, again, it's amazing how, like, if you just stay true to yourself, like, I went to the shittiest college ever. Like, if there's a ranking of colleges, I really think Mount Ida might be last. But the fact that it was 94% African American Latino in a world where I just lived in it for 4 years of my life for real, in a world where then hip hop and minority culture would become the gateway to culture, that's just really lucky timing. And I already had it with Edison, Jersey, and like had great diversity there of Indian, Asian, like that was great. Then high school was all white kids when I moved to Hunterdon. But yeah, man, that really fucking worked out. So, because you know, and a lot of you know, whatever culture you are, whether it's sorority girl culture, whether it's athlete dude, whether it's black, Asian girl, you always know when somebody's at a place in your culture. And so one of the amazing things is the reason it's worked for me is because I'm actually it. Like I was actually there right before Web 2.0 became social media, and thus those people accept me. I was actually spending an ungodly amount of my time like playing CeeLo and spades and hearts, surrounded by straight blunts to the face and 40s. Like, and so that culture, you know, that was when I really realized how true that statement was to me, was because I was out of it, right? It wasn't where I spent my time the last 10 or 15 years, but as soon as I started putting out content aggressively in Instagram, that culture came to me and I came to that culture, and it was just like not missing a beat, you know? So go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I mean basically I was just wondering like, so you kind of touched upon how that's the culture that you grew up with.
Yes.
But I feel like there are still other cultures that are untouched that you're trying to get into. So what about you makes you, A, want to go into these different worlds when you could easily be so relevant in your own?
Yeah.
And then B, how do you tread that carefully?
That's really good. So I think A is just about hunting DNA. I'm just more excited to be the hunter than being the hunted. So that's why I like starting shit from zero, right? I don't like when I'm really about to not like Vayner in 3 or 4 years. Just remember I told you, because we're gonna be the establishment. We're gonna be the A-list agency in 4 years, and then I'm gonna be like, I won that game, right? And then I'm gonna try to like sell hot dogs or something, right? So that's that. And then B, I think I ironically stay in my lane. What's amazing is entrepreneurship gives you unbelievable amounts of latitude. So it's not that I'm intrigued by Asian cuisine or, you know, the history of its art. I'm in it for the entrepreneurship. I think it's raw and real as shit there, so I gravitate towards it, right? And so what's happening now culturally with entrepreneurship is ridiculous. Like, I mean, the cliche thing is, right, like rappers wanted to be athletes, athletes wanted to be rappers, but now both of them want to be entrepreneurs. The amount of like, the amount of people that are reaching out to me that like blow my mind, it's really interesting to see as a pedestal. And then like the thought that it was ever the kind of thing that guys would leverage to get girls, like literally being an entrepreneur is cool. I'm like, fuck, I missed it by 20 years. Like that would have been, I mean, if that was the case, I would have been in great shape, you know, so. It's just interesting, but I try to stay in my lane in that way too. It's just that entrepreneurship is giving me a lot of room right now. Otherwise, I stayed very narrow if you look at it historically. Now, just the world is my oyster because artists, like, I mean, painters want to be entrepreneurs, right? Like, everybody wants to have that element, you know? I'm gonna bounce around a little bit. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Curveball,
So
right?
yeah, that was real quick curveball. Can we go to
Yes.
something else real quick?
How many data points do you need before opening a new office, and what are they?
None. Actually, back to your question, one of the biggest reasons I don't talk about things that deep in detail or how smart I think I am, I never talk about that, it's because my mind's so intuitive. Like, I don't know, like I literally bought Everyday Health is a media company. They went public. They needed to get rid of their agency inside of it to go public because Wall Street doesn't value those dollars very well because it's EBITDA dollars versus multiple of media. So I got a random phone call and they're like, these 8 people are in LA. Do you want to hire one of them? One of them for this I had Grape Story when I represented Logan Paul and Jerome Jarre and all those people way back. Like, so they're like, Matt would be great to be the LA person for Grape Story. So I get on the phone with Matt Siegel, who runs LA now for us, and like an hour later, I hire all the people in his agency of Everyday Health and open up Vayner LA without talking to AJ, without talking to anybody, like just, I walked into a meeting with AJ like 5 hours later on a different subject, and at the end I was like, oh yeah, we're opening an LA office. You know, I mean, I promise. You didn't know that story?
No.
Yeah.
I feel like you acquired the whole company, but I didn't know
Yeah.
What did AJ say? What was his face like?
You know AJ. I mean, you guys know him a little more. He was like upset. like he was like, okay, dick. Like, you know, like. So, you know, it's really about people. Mickey and Eric Fullwire are why Chattanooga and London exist. London was an opportunity, you know, and whether it's Singapore or Mexico City or the places or Johannesburg, the things I'm debating are more opportunistic, more so than, it's never like, oh, there's great college talent here or there's these things going on. It's never big data. It's more, I'm betting on my strengths. I intuitively feel it. I know what I'll do with it. I know why it will be successful. Let's move.
If the Gary who started VaynerMedia 8 years ago were to speak to you today, what would you say you're currently doing wrong?
You've succumbed too much to the game. I would critique myself in some of the things I'm doing here, which are just checking the boxes and pandering to the marketplace versus breaking it. Because that's what always happens. No matter how much of a disruptor, no matter how much I'm breaking things, you get sucked into the vortex of the reality of what you're doing and you start becoming some version of it. So if I'm 60-40, 70-30 right now, I'm doing a great job, that Gary would have been like, no dude, 100. Like, fuck that. But that's the pre-doing it thing.
What would you do to take Twitter to the next level from like a platform standpoint?
I would do a lot of things. I like what they're doing with, I would definitely become an OTT. So I think everybody should become an OTT. Don't forget, Twitter still has market share on home screen on phones at scale. Like to me, the two companies, Twitter and Spotify, are super interesting because I think they're undervalued for what they have because of many different reasons. Spotify has an amazing amount of subscriptions and like is valuable. And Twitter has enormous amounts of attention and is valuable. I would blow out the OTT, make it more and more about original program. Because you gotta understand, Netflix isn't Netflix until Orange is the New Black, until House of Cards. Twitter can do that, especially as we're getting closer to the phone being the remote control to your bigger screen in your home. So I would continue to do what they're doing there, and I'd probably get aggressive of eliminating all frictions of content creation. So I would eliminate the 140 character limit, for sure. I think it was a great gateway for the product, but is just irrelevant now. Like Twitter has to compete as a CMS, and you have to give people the ability to make all sorts of content that they want to. And I think limitations are a negative. I think Instagram should eliminate the length of the video because I think a lot of people here would watch 7-minute videos on Instagram, and I think a lot of people aren't producing 7-minute videos for Instagram. They're producing, now, they obviously own Facebook where that ends up, but I do believe a high percentage of those videos end up on YouTube that don't need to, and that's a land grab that Instagram can make. I think restrictions are amazing strategy for gathering users, and then I think they become detrimental after a period of time, and so I would definitely eliminate that. and I would push harder to make it more visual and less written, because I just think I think Twitter's fighting the market, and I think you shouldn't. I think Jack's already done some little things that have been better, like just little things that don't seem big, like the heart instead of the star. These are nice little subtle things that they're conforming. I would also bet the farm on voice. I would become a very big sound place for podcasts and for skills if they can get there, or just voice. Oh, go ahead.
When someone like pitches you, how do you know whether you want to advise them more so than invest, or opposite?
I don't really advise. You mean advise and or invest?
Yeah.
So I don't advise at all, because I can't make that trade proper. My time's too valuable, and I don't expect anybody to. I can't expect anybody here who pitches me their business idea to give me 49% of their business for advisory, but in reality, that'd be a good deal for you. But nobody thinks that.
So how would you kind of know who to?
I'm really not investing right now, like at all, because I'm just focused right now. But I've only invested one way successfully. Now that I've learned myself as an investor, the only thing, when I did it well, what I normally gravitate to, I've deviated a bunch when I was an investor. Like the fund, the $25 million I spent with me and Ross, I did not do well, in my opinion, because I was an investor. I deviated from who I am. When I'm at my best, I do one move. Person, idea, I'm out. Person, idea. If both work, I'm in. If one doesn't work, I'm out. That's always when I've been my best. Person, idea. Who's running it? Do I like her? What's the idea? Do I like it? Birchbox, 2 seconds. I loved both of them. I liked the idea. You know, like whether that company wins or loses because they've over-capitalized themselves is different. It was right, right? Venmo, one of the great losses of my career, even though it was a win. I loved Cortina. I knew that we would pay each other through mobile devices. I bet. He wasn't able to navigate the business to what it should have been, so we sold it and we made barely any money, but I should have made tens of millions of dollars. So there, even when you're right, you're not always right, you know?
Do you think it would ever make sense for you to sell equity in order to scale this business?
I have. So we've sold 30% to Steve Ross,
Okay.
but it will never happen again. Let me rephrase, it could.
Why not?
Which one? Because I said both opposite things.
Why was your initial instinct that it would never happen again?
Because I don't need it.
Okay.
And why give up equity? But the reason I backtracked is I'm enough of a personality, this is gonna be enough of a machine that somebody may give us $200 million on a $2 billion valuation when it's worth $500 million, and that might just be smart, right? If you get overcapitalized, if you know. So the place where we need to grow faster and where capital would become handy is the reason there's a VaynerX sign there. The reason the sign changed while you were here was to remind me I'm the CEO and chairman of VaynerX, not just VaynerMedia, and the media side, the Pure Wow side, and all the other sports and mail and all the other things I can build there, I could do some real fucking damage, and especially if I had capital, if I go out and buy Sports Illustrated, Men's Health is for sale now, things like that. So there could be. But if I take money, it would only be to accelerate the gallery and the media side, not the agency anymore, because that's on its way.
Got a minute.
This might be like an off-topic question.
That's what no, it's all on topic.
My sister always asks me if I want to come back and work at Vayner.
Yeah.
But I go to school in Chicago. And
Yes.
I was wondering if you were ever gonna think about
Chicago? Chicago?
something up in Chicago. Yeah.
It's crossed my mind. It's so the two places where we have clients that could justify an office are the Dallas area, because we're growing with Toyota and Frito-Lay, and the Chicago area because PepsiCo and Kraft now, and you know, Conagra has been a conversation. It's interesting though, I really don't have a lot of heart to open up another VaynerMedia office in a major city. So I would open up Milwaukee. I would open up Des Moines. Don't forget, I want to build this to buy brands and run it through them. I don't need any more big city DNA. I need more small city DNA. So if we were to ever service Chicago, it would definitely come in a tier 2 city like Milwaukee, or even a tier 3 city like Madison, Wisconsin, or you know?
Okay, I'll come back to New York.
Okay.
How do you stay focused on your own path and success without comparing
I don't know, combination of being an immigrant and having a ridiculously big time mom, because I don't. And it's like so real, I really wish you could have it too. I guess it's confidence. It's confidence, right? Like, it's unbelievable to me how much I didn't even remotely, like all the cliche things, like the things that come to mind is like the scenarios where I was able to not compromise, right? Like, prettiest girl that I was ever hanging out with wanting me to do drugs and I didn't waver, right? Like, I'm trying to think of like real life human stuff where like succumbing to peer pressure, right? Or ridiculous $5 million offer, ironically from China, on an MLM, multi-level marketing, to be the face of it, but because my ethics didn't believe in it, passed when 5 million would be like giving me 100 million right now. So I'm trying, like, confidence, right? Like, just not wavering, like just fundamentally not caring about what anybody else thinks or feeling that anybody else is impacting me besides myself. But I do think that has a lot to do with parenting. And so I think that ship has sailed for all of you, other than one move. I really believe the following. Watching D-Rock, even now having Eric in the room, thinking back to him, boy, do you get a lot from the people that you spend time with. Like, they're super different because of my impact on them. I'm just telling you that truth. I know it for fact. 100%. So I just really, 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 really recommend that if you, I've spent some time with you. A lot of you know yourselves pretty well, actually, which is great. This is a great time to reorganize your friends graph. If you admire some people, like, this is a good time. I literally befriended one of the biggest nerds in my high school. He runs Wine Library. It's just the truth. Sorry, Brandon. But like literally, like, and because I admired him at 14. It's just really a big deal.
I'm in the process of fully starting a business with my older brother.
Okay.
From your personal experience, like masterminding like a dynamic duo with AJ, what advice would you give for how to approach that partnership?
I think you need to have every hard conversation up front. So like, my answer is gonna be way deeper than tactical, because you're vulnerable, because you're brothers. You have to have you have to have weird conversations like who's more talented than who, what's the equity split, like the stuff that you have no interest in talking about. You guys are so much better off not starting the business and having those conversations than vice versa, because you will pay. Family businesses most often end up bad, and it's because you weren't willing to have the hard conversation up front. And you've got to have a flexible model. I think the only reason me and AJ survive in a good friendship is we made a commitment that we had no idea how it would work out, but we would work our asses off to adjusting to what it worked out. We didn't anticipate AJ leaving. Like, I would have bet the farm that I wouldn't be the one left standing running VaynerMedia. Like, that made no sense, right? Like, so you can't anticipate those things. You have to have hard conversations, bro. Because both of you probably think opposite things. Like, you probably, right? And especially about the part of who's better. And that's the hard one. Because that gets it to money. Because that's where it gets hard.
It's also the older, younger.
100%. And I've done them both. I had a father, and then I had a younger brother. So I played on both sides of this argument. For me, the good thing and the bad thing was I was the better player. But they come with, your gift is your curse.
Going off that, my family's also in a family business, but what advice do you have to if you don't want to be involved in that, how to
break the news? Straight. Straight with no chaser.
How does your family come first in most of your situations, and how does it not?
Yeah, so for me, that's a great question. So it's funny, I think family first means that you've got to be selfish first, because then you have the ability to put family first. You've got to make it macro. And at the macro, if you really don't want to go into the business and there's expectations for you to go into business, there's nothing you can do. If you go into the business, you'll start chipping away and losing, right? On the flip side, the idea of I'm coming for 3 years, but then I'm out. And then having the strength to be out, right? Because then you bring some value, then you also, as I've said to somebody else in this room, the learning is disproportionate. Because when you're a family member and you get elevated to a very high place right away, You have to deal with the baggage of other people judging you for that, but you can siphon so much learnings that no job is gonna teach you. None. Zero. And that could be massively valuable, right? So, and again, and I think anybody who's consuming my content, I wish you knew how young I felt. I genuinely feel like I'm your contemporary. Like in my body right now, I just basically look at you guys and like, we're friends, right? And like, if you really knew that truth, that's the one I'm hot on. I've been saying it a lot. I'm hot on this because it's the real. Like you guys feel like you're the same. I definitely do. I'm 41, twice your age. So like, when you know that truth, you can get real patient. And when you get real patient, you make totally different decisions. All of a sudden, the first 3 years out of school, when you put it in the context I did, I put it in the context of 12, 15 years. And I was still young, and I was right. That changes everything. You will make fundamental different decisions if you believe that. And it's almost impossible to do. You're either an old soul and have wisdom that was brought into you, or you hear something that makes you go down a rabbit hole that gets you there. That's the big one, though. What do I have?
Guy from South Africa, comedian, David Cow.
Okay, and then?
Like 10 minutes here, and then Justine, we can do it later.
Okay, good. 5 more minutes.
So we, in our state here, like heard a bunch of stories about VaynerMedia, the progression, you know, from back in the day to now. Heard a lot of stories where we were like, oh wow, can't believe you were doing that, managing like Twitter accounts for Chase. That didn't make sense at the time, but wow, how that worked out. And then other things about like how VaynerX is becoming a vehicle to like acquire companies and build them out. And I think this question piggybacks off of Sam's question really well about the advice you would give back to yourself. When do you go against the grain when it comes to a business decision, go against like industry standards, and when do you feel like you have to play into what industry standards are to be successful?
My natural is to go, you know, it's funny, and this is actually funny to the question. It was hard for me to answer what would Gary, the 2008 version or whatever. The answer is, I'm not sure, because I don't factor either into my decision making. I actually don't even know when I'm going against the grain, because I have no context for the grain. I just navigate. So, you know, this goes back to confidence. I know what I'm trying to achieve, right? Which is, in the short term, I keep things outrageously basic. Client is paying us. They want something to happen. I'd like to make that happen to the best of our abilities for that price. That's what comes out of my mouth and my head every time. Whether that's against the grain or not is something I usually don't know. You know, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. The reason I was a DNF student is I don't study anything. My religion is the consumer, and then it always works out, you know? So I don't think of it that thoughtfully. I really don't, because I don't spend any time trying to understand the landscape. All I do is spend my time trying to reverse engineer consumers' attention and then develop capabilities to deliver on what I think they want.
What's your 5-year vision in terms of your world and VaynerMedia? Like, where do you think it is going to be in 5 years? I think you're going to be as
I don't think about it that way at all. I think that it will be better. Both. You know, I don't think of it that way at all. I never do. There's too much that's gonna change in 5 years. You know, I try to think of it more as if I continue, so the way I answer the 5-year question or the 10-year question is if on a daily basis, I'm doing the right decision making, it always works out, right? Never in a million years did I think I would have Eric film me and do a wine show on February 21st, 2007. You know, that probably squeaked into my head that December when Lazy Sunday became viral. And you know, we were following YouTube very early on, and then one video got to 1 million views, Lazy Sunday. It was like an SNL, remember that? You guys are super young, you were like 4, but SNL had a skit that they put on YouTube, it went viral, and it got 1 million views. And then I was like, there's something going on here. And my first move was telling AJ to start a Jets. AJ was actually the first video blogger in our family. I made AJ start a Jets blog in college first, and then so we were part of a Jets bulletin board, and he got DM'd by the Jets fullback's wife telling him that he was getting cut like 3 days early, and he reported it on Jets TV at BU, and it was true. And so now he has huge credibility, I guess, in the Jets circle. And then I get a tip from the Jets that they're trading John Abraham, like their star player, which was also true, but they told me he was going to Denver. And he was, but then they made a trade, and three-way trade, and went to Atlanta instead. But AJ on his vlog, in his dorm room in BU, says that John Abraham's gonna get traded to Denver. And then 3 hours later, on fucking ESPN, it says, Jets TV reporting John Abraham to Atlanta. And I remember thinking, the world is about to change. And like, that was January after the season, February 21st. 3 weeks later, I started Wine Library TV. But literally 7 weeks earlier, it didn't even cross my mind. We can watch through our videos. When do you think, D-Rock? 3 months? Somewhere a few minutes ago, I decided voice was the most important thing ever. What? 2 or 3 months ago. I don't know, like before I knew of its existence, I was paying attention. But that's how fast I think things are. So to even think in 5-year terms, to me, you win the 5-year game by worrying about the 5-minute game. All right, last one. Let me get something new.
So you always talk about the importance of building a honey empire.
Yes.
During times that you're forced to choose between putting like an employee first or
Honey.
like, taking a business loss.
Honey. That's why it's not the empire of honey. If it was the empire of honey, the empire would come first. The reason it's the honey empire is if there's a choice between the people that work here and the money associated with that decision, I will always pick the people. Because in the long term, I'll make more money too. The end. It works on both fronts. The problem for me is I don't believe the company believes that. And I'm empathetic to that. Like, we have unbelievable cynicism towards business and things of that nature, and so many people, like, there's a lot of people that work here that have not spent this much time with me. Stunning, right, like, so, you know, and you've been here?
Almost 3 years.
Right. That's not true because you did sit in on last year's, but like, but it's stunning how little. It's stunning how little, and so.
But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, you reverse engineer, you know, I'm not okay with it, which is why I'm gonna start forcing them to sit with me just to make sure I feel like a pulse of the 1,000 people. Because I think the one way for me to fix the VaynerMedia as a company is a company. There's reviews, there's this, all the vulnerabilities that I hate, it has it. I think it's better than the alternative, but it has it. I think me as a separate energy against the whole thing is where we get real special. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. Right? Because I think the market's a C, I think we're a B, and with me being an energy over here with the company, then we become an A. And so that's an easy, I mean, that's back to like, that's what I do. That's why Alan, the CFO's mad all the time. Because his job is to be like, you know, the defensive coordinator, right? He's the CFO, he cares about the money part. He only has to care about the money part, and when I'm making decisions that break that, that's frustrating, right? Using football terms, if I'm throwing the ball on my 1 yard line and throwing an interception at the 7, like that sucks. Defense goes on the field pretty sad, you know? So, but that's what I will do to the end. So, thanks guys. Thanks everyone.
Good, man.
Thanks, man. Guys, thanks for listening to the audio experience. 2 things. 1, make sure you're watching my vlog on YouTube. And 2, hit me up on the DM. It's going down on the DM. Hey guys, it's Gary Vaynerchuk, and this is the Gary V audio experience. I'm giving free advice every day, and then people are coming up with excuses. I'm giving it to you for free, and you still got excuses like, I have too many passions.
I love setting out the gifts, and then
I'm done with that, by the way. Officially on this, is this 261, Jake? On episode 261, I'm putting the gauntlet down. No more ever using the excuse, I have too many passions. It's just a classic excuse to not do. Gary, it really sucks. I'm really good at so many things, and I have so many passions that I don't know what to do. Classic bullshit excuse. You know, it's funny, because I asked you so many questions, you had some pretty interesting twists and turns. You were in the hospitality business early in your career. Then you saw things like, you know, you had some really interesting moments when you decided to rep talent differently. Have the moments where you made the right decisions with whether repping Phil later, you know, with the restaurants, and I know we have to catch everybody up on these things. Did you just know?
No, I knew I was going to, at the end game, like a kid asked me today, he was up in the office, says, do you ever think you're going to be this successful? I said, fuck, of course. Do you think I started this thing to be a failure? Yeah, I started this thing to be successful.
Can I ask you a really important question?
Sure.
Will you end up being less or more successful than you thought when you were 17? So I talk a lot about macro, patience, micro, speed, and I think that's my everyday mindset. My everyday mindset is like, fucking, I mean, you know how I play basketball, you know, like that's my mindset, man. I'm trying to win, I'm trying to go fast, I wanna make every second count, I wanna impact, I wanna get shit done, I wanna keep the ball moving down the field, I wanna take care of all the fires, like every day is fires, every day is fires. Like it's real, the biggest problem about being the ultimate boss in anything, if you guys decide to do that one day, is it sucks. I don't know what else to tell you, it's just all negative. Which is why having optimism or gratitude is really kind of one of the only ways to pull it off. A healthy way to pull it off, right? I think other people pull it off, but they burn out, they jump out of a window, they have like bad lives. The healthy way is just utter blind optimism, because the truth is, there has not been one day that I haven't dealt with like some pretty fucked up shit. So to ground everybody in the conversation, I'm coming out with a K-Swiss sneaker in November, like legitimately a Gary V sneaker. And to be very honest with you, this is just a truth, and I like to stay in the truth lane. I haven't really thought about it. The only reason I'm doing it is because it's a win-win situation. Either it does really well with all the people that now live on Instagram, which is every single 16 to 25-year-old dude, right? For the most part, in my audience, and a small percentage of female who it's gonna resonate with, because it's gonna be like, bless you, oh, this is Gary V's sneaker, that's funny, that's cool, that's interesting, oh, K-Swiss is retro, da-da-da. It goes on fashion trends, which is, we're seeing so many brands reemerge quickly. But I haven't really thought about like who I wanted to resonate with, or who I think it's gonna resonate with, because it's not why I did it. I did it purely selfishly around two core things. One, if it works, if the sneaker really sells well, I forever have the history of being the entrepreneur that got put on the way that, you know, Jordan with Athlete and Yeezy with like music, like that's huge legacy. If it fails miserably, it's an incredibly fun, self-deprecating inside joke for me and my friends of like, remember when I had the audacity to think I could have a sneaker? So it's just a win-win situation.
What would you do to take Twitter to the next level from like a platform standpoint?
I would do a lot of things. I like what they're doing with, I would definitely become an OTT. So I think everybody should become an OTT. Don't forget, Twitter still has market share on home screen on phones at scale. Like to me, the two companies, Twitter and Spotify, are super interesting because I think they're undervalued for what they have because of many different reasons. Spotify has an amazing amount of subscriptions and like is valuable, and Twitter has enormous amounts of attention and is valuable. I would blow out the OTT, make it more and more about original program, because you gotta understand, Netflix isn't Netflix until Orange is the New Black, until House of Cards. Twitter can do that, especially as we're getting closer to the phone being the remote control to your bigger screen in your home. So I would continue to do what they're doing there, and I'd probably get aggressive of eliminating all frictions of content creation. So I would eliminate the 140 character limit, for sure. I think it was a great gateway for the product, but is just irrelevant now. Like Twitter has to compete as a CMS, and you have to give people the ability to make all sorts of content that they want to. And I think limitations are a negative. I think Instagram should eliminate the length of the video, because I think a lot of people here would watch 7-minute videos on Instagram, and I think a lot of people aren't producing 7-minute videos for Instagram. They're producing, now, they obviously own Facebook where that ends up, but I do believe a high percentage of those videos end up on YouTube that don't need to, and that's a land grab that Instagram can make. I think restrictions are amazing strategy for gathering users, and then I think they become detrimental after a period of time, and so I would definitely eliminate that, and I would push harder to make it more visual and less written, because I just think I think Twitter's fighting the market, and I think you shouldn't. I think Jack's already done some little things that have been better, like just little things that don't seem big, like the heart instead of the star. These are nice little subtle things that they're conforming. I would also bet the farm on voice. I call this video August, and I'll tell you why. August fascinates me. I grew up in the wine business where you did a lot of business with Europe. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I was always confused by August because August was the time that I completely got in the zone because I knew everybody was sleeping. And what I mean by that is everybody was on vacation. In Europe, all my vendors, they were gone the whole month, ghost. In the US, a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, and you know, it was really interesting. I just really used it as my time to get ready for that fourth quarter, right? People came back in September and they were like just rolling fast for that prime time. I was in retail. For all you young hustlers out there or old hustlers out there, August is the month. This is the month where guys, even I'm taking plenty of time with my family. This is when people really slow it down. Look for those out of office replies because they're on the up during August. And if you're watching this video right now, and if you want it as bad as I hear you want it, and if this is your year, and if 2017 is gonna be your year, and if this is your moment, and if you're sick and tired, and it's your time, then my friends, you need to understand that these 30, is there 30 or 31? These 31, I think, 31 days, hope that's right, in August, these 31 days in August is exactly when you triple down, when you 4X, 5X down in your hustle, while everybody's at the pool drinking rosé. This is when you put in the grinding hours and get ready for your master plan. August, my friends, is always, always the month that sets the tone for your future for all the people that are complaining or disappointed at where they're at. Now, I'm gonna flip you a little bit. August is also the month for all those people that are content, got bags under their eyes, hustled all year, crushing it. It's a very strategic month to kind of go into that rest period, get a little sun, play a little tennis, play in the pool with your friends, your girlfriend, and your kids. August is such an interesting month for me. You can play it one or two ways, but it depends on where your head's at right now. Podcast listeners, I really appreciate you giving me your ear. I respect it. I appreciate it. You want to 1-star this shit? Cool. But if you want to 5-star it, even better. Hey guys, it's Gary Vaynerchuk, and this is the Gary V Audio Experience. I was once on top, but then I fell off. How do I regain my energy levels? Karam, to just realize you've got no fucking choice. What I don't think people realize is you've got no choice but to get back on the game, right? To like really attack, to go. Like either you dwell on your misfortunes or you look at them as, you know, chips on your shoulders to make you better. Like I think romanticizing around losses is interesting. Like it is. Oh, look, my former life. It's just a mindset. Like you know, like I think the problem is that people get to a place where they don't want to go backwards because they get fancy, right? They get accustomed to a certain lifestyle, they want certain things, and like for me, I love the game so much more than the riches that come along with it. And so you can get real cozy and comfortable with nice homes and nice trips and dinners, but the truth is, like, I don't know, for me, it's like, you know, I'd prefer not to, you know, go backwards, but if I have to, I have to, because I made mistakes and the market made me pay for it. And you gotta love the fact that the game is fair, and like, that's it. And like, too many people are like, it's unfair. It's super fucking fair. Like, shit went down and that's it. Like, of course it's fair. Like, it is what it is. I think everything's fair. Like, your parents, you know, die in a car accident, is that the most devastating thing in the world? Of course. It's just like, it's foundationally devastating. The problem is, at that moment in the crisis of your life, you either decide to dwell and use that as a crutch for the rest of your life, or you decide that you want to, you know, bring value to your parents' legacy and come through for the dreams they had for you. And like, that's a mindset, that's a DNA thing, that's an environment thing. The thing that I've realized is my mom instilled so much confidence in me. My circumstance of being the oldest, you know, born immigrant kid, it instilled confidence in me. My environment, my natural DNA, my mom, you know, a million things happened. And now all I want to do is instill confidence in others, right? You know, I want to instill confidence in others, you know? I just, oh, iPhone is muffled. I don't know, can you guys hear me? Hello, hello, hello? Hello, hello, hello? I don't know if it's, anyway, I don't know if you can hear me, but bottom line is real simple. Like, I'm trying to be here every day for everybody and bring value to you guys so that you guys can feed off my energy and optimism and and me in some way through my communication style instilling confidence in you or giving you courage feels like an incredible opportunity for me to give back to the game that's been so good to me. And so I have a level of gratitude and probably some level of guilt of how good my DNA is, how good my circumstance is. I got blessed being an immigrant and coming from, you know, not much, and having so much charisma and hunger and all that shit. And so anything I can do through my documenting, through my live streams, through my 5 Instagram posts a day, anything I can do to, you know, be a different voice from the negative voices around you, whether that negative voice is in your head, whether that negative voice is coming from your parents, whether your negative voices are coming from your coworkers or friends or, you know, girlfriends, boyfriends, that's it. And so like when Andy Sorales says, bro, chill with the acid, it makes me smile. When everybody says, give me the drugs you're giving to yourself, or this guy's on coke or whatever it is, it makes me happy. You guys can't hear me? Anyway, makes me happy because when I know that I don't even put Advil into my system, when I know that I've never even tried smoking, when I know that it's super hard to stay positive and super easy to be cynical, which means I'm trying so hard every fucking day that it's so much harder to be optimistic and positive. And so, you know, it is what it is. Like, at the end of the day, I care so much for you to feed off of this. And on the flip side, I don't give a fuck. Outside of Liz Novello, who's in this, who's my sister, like, I'll give you everything I got, D-Rock. And if you don't take it, fuck you, right? And that's just the way it is. Like, I don't know what else to say, you know? I can only do so much. And I try to give as much as I can. And I ask for nothing. I want nothing from you other than a couple little hearts, a couple little thanks, those emails, those comments. You guys know my oxygen. It's simple. Your comments, your likes. Like, do you know how much it means to me when you guys engage with my social content? When you subscribe, when you leave a comment, when you just say thanks, when you like a post, when you leave a comment on YouTube or retweet a tweet, or, you know, that's all I ask for in return. Just a head nod, an acknowledgement. I appreciate you trying so hard to give value. You know, that's it. That's the trade. I'll give you everything I fucking have. Every fucking secret that pops into my dome, every tactic that I've got, every connection I can give you, every hello I can give you, any acknowledgement I can give you, my 3 seconds attention when we run into each other at an airport, answer you when I can, give you the best content that I can, give you the blueprint that got me here when I can, produce, invest in production of content at scale, try to fucking extract everything that's in my fucking soul for you for free. And just a little likey like, a little sharey share, a little subscribey scribe is all I ask for in return. You can keep your money. I'm playing for your admiration, and I want to earn it. So that's my spiel. That's me. That's what I'm playing. All-time fucking legacy. All time. The great. Like, I want to be the great entrepreneur of this generation. There'll be people who make more money than me. There'll be people that invent more. But nobody's going to give a fuck about their audience more. It's not possible. You can only tie me, and I'm going to outwork you. Period. That's it. That's how I think about it. And you know what the best part is? I love the admiration, and I love the cynicism. Willie Whopper saying the man's a fool. Either he's slang terming it and fool is awesome because I've heard that, or I could take it the other way and it's not, which also motivates the fuck out of me because I will stick it to your fucking face all day, every time. Everybody who's ever doubted me loses. Losses in your fucking column. You were wrong if you were against me. Wrong. You know how good that feels? The best. You know, fucking love that. So, I love that. Feels good. Love the game. So, all right. So, I think I gotta go. That's how I see it. I'm gonna go. Hey guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode of the Gary Vee Experience. Now go out and share this, pass it on, let me know what you thought. Hey guys, it's Gary Vee, Nerdchuck, and this is the Gary Vee Audio Experience.
It's very important to say to garner attention by doing the right things as well, though.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because at the end, if you do the wrong things, you can get all the attention in the world. Eventually, you know, it plays out in a negative. Like, karma's practical. Like, I love all these kids that think there's passive income and are going to get rich real quick. You know, everybody's trying to figure out that game. It just doesn't exist.
Well, let me ask you, you know, the one thing that I get all the time, and I'm sure Yi does all the time, is, hey, I have this money, what can I invest in?
Yes.
And it's very difficult because I invest in feelings. You know what I mean? Like, if I feel a product, I invest in it. If I feel a property, I invest in it. Angeli and I felt this juice bar, and we bought a juice bar. So last time I challenged you, and you helped a lot of people out. A lot of people were able to go to the $5 store, and it's funny, I still go to the $5 store. I
thought it was a dollar store.
No, there's Five Below now.
There's Five Below.
There's Five Below
Well,
as well.
there's flea markets.
Still got Dollar General.
Marshalls,
Let me tell you about Five Below just quickly. The trolleys that they sell at 7-Eleven for $2.99 at Five Below is $5. So you can bubble trolleys and make money. But anyway, so I'm gonna challenge you again.
Okay.
I have my son doing all this. Challenge you again. Somebody has a little bit of money. They don't know what to do with that money. What would you suggest that people say, okay, I have a little bit of money. What can I do to make some money?
The first thing is, what's real tough about this is you have so many different people listening, right? So there's a couple things that run through my mind. Number one, how quickly do you want the money back?
People always want money fast. People want
That's
fast.
the
They want
problem.
right now,
you
right
know,
away.
You know why Warren Buffett in the middle of America is the guy with the most money? He basically made a very simple bet that if you bet on Wall Street, right, the stock market of America, you're betting on America. And as long as America doesn't go out of business, and as long as I don't have to take that money out.
When should I ditch my 9-to-5 and work on art and animation full time and make that my income? That's one I get quite a lot.
When you can afford it. You know, I want to know what you're doing from 5:30 p.m. to 2 in the morning if you want to live your life on your terms. You know, everybody wants to be able to have all this amazingness. You know, there's nothing greater in the world than to be able, you know, in the business world, to be able to be on your terms. You know, don't you think you have to put a crap load of work into that? So, you know, I would say as soon as you can afford it, and by the way, most people can afford it very early on. You just have to live a very artist lifestyle. It comes down to the balance of how you want to live your lifestyle versus how much money you're taking. But the truth is, you can do it very, very, very quickly if you're willing to live on a couch with 7 other guys and gals in a studio apartment. I mean, it just comes down to that. There was a very interesting thing that John said, because I grew up in that environment too, and John's from the traditional marketing world that we grew up in, from pulling from his world. Notice how he said, first-time customer, I'll give it to you, because the traditional retail and bar thing is like, look, it's more like if you've already got somebody in the funnel, the cost of acquisition for a newbody is very, very, very powerful. I used to do that too, but it was tricky, right? Because now some of your old-time customers may see that, and they've got that angst of, wait a minute, why am I being not treated that way as a loyal customer? You just want new people, and it's always been a friction for us, right? In the right? Now, I just went to Instagram, right? I typed in Lexington, Kentucky. Got it?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at 9 posts right now that are top posts, and ungodly amounts, unlimited amounts of people's posts that are from Lexington, Kentucky. I went down all the way down, and that's from 48 minutes ago. 40 pictures down, 48 minutes ago. Thousands of people are posting right now on Instagram from Lexington, Kentucky. I go to the top 9 posts. I click the middle one. It's a nice little cute couple, right? They got 298 likes. Abby, she's from somewhere. She's part of a sorority, it looks like. She has 2,387 followers. There's a triple dot in the top right corner on Instagram. I hit it. It lets me send her a message. I send her a message. Abby, see you in Lexington. We love being part of Lexington. Here's a $20 off coupon, $10 off coupon, free chicken. Only she sees it. You're grabbing somebody who has a big social media profile. You've not hurt any of your loyal customers like me and John had to back in the day. She comes and she posts a picture of the food and creates word of mouth. Now that $5 acquisition created no friction to loyal customers, and because she's now media, she amplifies it, and you're getting an $80, $500, $4,000 media amplification against your $5.
And last one thing, don't discount. People get addicted to discounts. They don't get addicted to free.
That's right. In my later years, I got really good at knowing something was 24 or 36 months away. I was uniquely good enough at selling to keep myself alive to when it happened. And then it was like buying Malibu beachfront property. The people that bought up the best property in Malibu, it wasn't fucking Malibu yet, but they knew that they could pay for it. They were happy with whatever Malibu brought to the table, and they uniquely, most of them, not everyone, knew that Malibu would become Malibu, and then they backed into it. And I think that's the people that bet on podcasting right now, or people that bet on text messaging, or people that bet on apps in 2009 versus 2007 on the iOS. But anybody, I'm giving this advice to the three of you as you guys continue to ball out. Like, if you got some money and like you never need it again, maybe for like the rainiest of rainy day, $100, $1,000, and especially if you can get into that $10,000 to $100,000, if you just put it in the stock market, like it plays out. If you put it in the S&P, it plays out. It compounds at 10% per year. That shit adds up in a 20-year period. So for the most conservative, you know, putting it away for college instead of the bank and getting no interest, all you have to avoid is those crazy moments every 7 to 10 years when the market collapses. But if you're not taking it out, you didn't lose. Guys, thanks so much for listening to the audio experience. It would mean the world, and I mean the world, if you could go and leave a rating on iTunes. Your word of mouth is my oxygen. Hey guys, it's Gary V, Nerdchuck, and this is the Gary V audio experience.
Do you feel like college taught you valuable business tools, or do you feel like a majority of your business knowledge came from other sources?
I feel like all of my business knowledge came from other sources. I learned nothing in college. From a business standpoint, I learned a lot from college, from a growing up as a man standpoint, from a swag standpoint, from a basketball standpoint, from a hip hop music standpoint. Zero business. I'm scared. I'm super scared. I'm scared because I know exactly what happens this month every year for the rest of time, or actually not the rest of time. Hopefully this will end soon, but I'm scared. I'm scared because I know that there are so many of you that graduate this month and have no fucking idea what you want to do, and that's okay. Most people don't. You should not be stressed about that. I'm actually not scared about that. I'm scared that you don't realize that you're entering the greatest 5-year window of your life. If you are 22 years old and graduating from college, shit, if you're 22 years old and not graduating from college, if you are 22 years old, you are entering, first of all, some of the greatest years of your life, A, but B, this is the moment. Watch this video twice. If mama's watching this, send this to your daughter Sally right now, because you have to understand, this next 5-year window is when you don't go practical and safe. This is not the time to get the job mom wanted you to. This is not the time to try to maximize as much money so you can buy a fat whip. This is the time to realize that you have a 5-year window, and it's 3 for some, it's 8 for others, but this is a 5-year window for you to attack the life that you want to win, not because it's the secret or because the world's so zen, because it's fucking hard as shit out there. As a matter of fact, I'm probably more scared about your naivete to how hard class is easy, right? What you've been doing for the last 16 years is easy. It's a fucking bullshit game. It's structured, it's easy. The world, this thing is hard. However, that contradicts what I'm going to tell you right now, which is this is the best and easiest 5 years of your life, because this is when you need to attack what you love and what you want to do. Here's why. You don't have all the baggage. You may have college loans. Respect, it's hard as shit. You may have the expectations of your parents. Mentally hard, fake hard. You may have a lot of other things, but this is exactly when you can live with 4 roommates in a basement and eat fucking fast food. Do you understand? This is not when the baby's there. Some of you have babies. This is not when you've been married and you promised. This is not when the world has sucked out all your dreams and hopes yet. You still got this window. And yet, so many of you are so hungry for short-term gains, like maximizing the job that paid you $3,000 more, but it's not as fun, but you want that $3,000. For what? For what? For a new iPhone? For what? You get to live life one time. And this is the time right now to understand what's actually happening and actually map your behavior to something that will impact you for the next 80 years. So promise me, all you youngsters that are watching this right now, in the fucking comments, because I'll jump in and talk to you, promise me that you understand that the land grab of happiness starts right now, that you don't have to worry about getting that job. What you should do is go and travel and learn. Go and start that business that you've always wanted. Hook up with those 3 teammates and start that band you've always wanted. This is the time to be massively risk oriented. I know that this is when you're supposed to grow up and go see the world, but guess what? The world isn't what mommy and daddy told you. The world is exactly going to be what it's going to be, with or without the way you thought it was going to be. A ton of shit is going to change. The world changes every goddamn day. Right now, what you need to recognize is you can afford to. And not all of you, I'm sure somebody will leave a comment and say, I've got a loan. I get it, respect. But that loan is going to be there whether you go and try to build something for yourself or not, one way or the other. And by the way, you can work at night. This is when you put in the 18 hours a day to make your life that you want happen. And again, because I'm scared, I can hear myself fucking talking. I'm not saying it's the secret, it's practicality. When you are in your early 20s, this is when you can grind at your highest levels, because there isn't all the fucking baggage that comes across from life. It's harder for the 42-year-olds that are watching right now to listen to this advice. You can't just wake up tomorrow and be like, let's go, because little Sally has soccer fucking practice, and because you've got a million other things that are holding you down. But boy, if you're lucky enough to be graduating today with not a fucking idea of what you're going to do with your future, nobody's ever been luckier than you. Please recognize it. Joe, I'm going to let Casey answer this first, just because I think it'd be fun to have you start off the show.
Yeah, no, I've got a strong feeling about further education, which is that I think in life you should only be doing 2 things ever. And one is like discovering what your passion is, and then 2 is realizing it. So Joe, if you know what you want to do and you are convicted that's where you want to be in life, and that trajectory does not necessitate a college education, then skip it. Chances are you don't know what you want to do, otherwise you wouldn't be asking us this question. And if you don't know what you want to do, your responsibility is to figure that out. And college is one of the best places, one of the best atmospheres, environments you can be in to figure out what your calling is in life, to figure out what your passion is, what your purpose is.
Joe, I'm going to jump in here as the cars are racing outside and say this. I agree with a ton of what Casey said. I'll also add that if you're taking $200,000 in debt to find your passion, that might be a practical kind of, by the way, debt that you can't even declare bankruptcy against, which I mean, I can't even, I'm suffocated by the game, the AK racket that is student loans. Yeah. And today, in today's environment, things that you and I didn't have, there are other places where young people congregate and pound into each other, and the serendipity of finding those mentors or contemporaries that allow people to discover. So look, I think one thing for sure, it's fun. Entrepreneurial, I look at you as an entrepreneurial artist, but I look at you way more artistic than I may. So call it entrepreneur, artist. Boy, there's a lot of rationale in a 2015 world where college is not the right answer. And I think, you know what's really been unique to me, Joe, is I'm going to give you a weird answer. I actually find that there's an enormous amount of kids, and I'm spending a lot of time on this topic since I was a shit student and have made something of myself, that a lot of kids are still just going to college, just making that decision on not wanting to disappoint their parents. And that to me is maybe the most fascinating thing going on, is that father of a 5 and a 2-year-old living on the Upper East Side with elite private schools where I'm paying college tuition for kindergarten already. It's been funny to me because I'm really poking and prodding the parents that are my new contemporaries to see how much pressure, and they have not switched yet. The reason I keep talking about college in a world where a lot of my friends talk about its demise as more of a 20-year thing than a 10-year thing is because I still think parents of my generation still value it too much for their own self-esteem. They want to say their kids went to Stanford and Harvard and things of that nature. So look, you've got to make your own decision, but I'm with you, like discovering it, and then I'd be curious now, I'm like mixing up the show. What do you think about this based on your answer? Because your answer is my answer, and there's one other part that I'm trying to figure out. I'm a big fan of practicality. I think you and I got lucky that not only were we able to figure out our passion, but we actually had some level of talent within it. There's a lot of people, a la the people that go and try out for American Idol or the wannabe NBA players. What's your point of view on Joe figuring out his passion is to paint, but he sucks shit at it?
Well, you know, I think that anyone's life, your world always shrinks and expands in proportion to your willingness to take risk or try new things. And that's why I think that, like, an academic environment is a great place for trying new things and experimenting with new things. So if your passion is painting and you're a terrible painter, then maybe being in an environment like college will open your eyes to something like graphic design, which doesn't involve a paintbrush. But you can make a great living at it, and you're realizing an artistic passion that is certainly in line with painting.
Do you think that then one needs to be challenged to make sure they go into the funnel of college to recognize they're not there to check those boxes? Because the way you play the game actually has as much to do with the game, right? If you hack college in the way that you're talking about it, you know, now you're starting to think about, you know, course selection. You're talking about the kind of group of friends that you're spending time with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think college can be a total waste of time and money. If not approached carefully. And I think a lot of kids today go there for a lot of the wrong reasons, like what you're suggesting. And certainly if there are other opportunities that feel better to you than college, I think now today those opportunities are
way more practical.
Are as practical as an academic education. I can tell you that a big falsehood is that by going to college, you will get something else. You will find success. And one thing that's becoming more and more true, especially as technology is opening up all new means of transmission of information, is that if there were a defined path to success, especially in any sort of creative endeavor, everyone would just follow that defined path. 100%. There is no defined path. And college can be a great way to help you find one of those paths, but it is certainly not the only way, and it's certainly not a guarantee that you'll find that trajectory.
Yep. Let's move on. Podcast listeners, I really appreciate you giving me your ear. I respect it. I appreciate it. You want to 1-star this shit? Cool. But if you want to 5-star it, even better. Navigated through. Can you please tell them?
It was 6 months, not even 5 months of a bunch of people that shouldn't be.
This is Audible.
Joseph Campbell.
Or other condition.
So that if we happen not to be heroes in the grand sense of redeeming society, we have to take that journey ourselves spiritually, psychologically, inside us.
That's right. And Otto Rank, in his wonderful, very short book called The Myth of the Birth of the Hero, he says that everyone is a hero in his birth. He has undergone a tremendous transformation from a little, you might say, water creature living in a realm of the amniotic fluid and so forth, and then coming out, becoming an air-breathing mammal that ultimately will be self-standing and so forth. This is an enormous transformation, and it is a heroic act, and it's a heroic act on the mother's part to bring it about. That's the primary hero form, you might say.
Still a journey to be taken after that.
There's a big one to be taken.
And that journey is not consciously undertaken. Do heroes go out on their own initiative?
Well, they're both kinds. A very common one that appears in Celtic myths of someone who has followed the lure of a deer or animal that he has been following, and then carries him into a range of forest and landscape that he's never been in before. And then the animal will undergo a transformation and become the queen of the fairy hills or something like that. That is one of not knowing what you're doing. You suddenly find yourself in full career of an adventure. There's another one where one sets out responsibly and intentionally to perform the deed. For instance, when Ulysses' son, Telemachus, was called by Athene, go find your father. That father quest is a major hero adventure for young people. That is the adventure of finding what your career is, what your nature is, what your source is. He undertakes that intentionally. Then there's one into which you are thrown and pitched. For instance, being drafted into the army. You didn't intend it, they are in. Hey! You're in another transformation. You've undergone a death and resurrection. You put on a uniform. You're another creature.
So does the heroism have a moral objective?
The moral objective is that of saving a people or saving a person or saving an idea. He is sacrificing himself for something. That's the morality of it. Now, you, from another position, might say that something was something that should not have been realized, you know. That's judgment from another side. But it doesn't destroy the heroism of what was done. Absolutely not.
Well, that's a different angle on heroes than I got when I was reading as a young boy the story of Prometheus going after the fire and bringing it back and benefiting humanity and suffering for it.
I mean, Prometheus brings fire to mankind and consequently civilization. That's, by the way, a universal theme.
What is?
The hero, the fire theft theme usually with a relay race after it. Often it's blue jay or woodpecker or something like this that steals the fire and then passes it on to something else and something else, one animal after another. And they're burned by the fires as they're carrying it on, and that accounts for the different colorings of animals and so forth. It's a worldwide myth, the fire theft.
Do these stories of the hero vary from culture to culture?
Well, it's the degree of the illumination that, or action that makes him different. There is a typical early culture hero who goes around slaying monsters. Now that is in the period of history when man is shaping his world out of a wild, savage, unshaped world. Well, it has another shape, but it's not the shape for man. He goes around killing monsters.
So the hero evolves over time, like most other concepts and ideas. And
well, he evolves as the culture evolves. Yeah. Now, Moses is a hero figure. In his ascent of the mountain, his meeting with Yahweh on the summit of the mountain, and coming back with the rules for the formation of a whole new society. That's the hero act. Departure, fulfillment, return. And on the way, there are adventures that can be paralleled also in other traditions. Now, the Buddha figure, it's like that of the Christ. Of course, 500 years earlier, you could match those two traditions right down the line, even to the characters of their apostles or their monks. Christ. Now, there's a perfectly good hero deed formula represented there. And he undergoes 3 temptations. The economic temptation, where the devil says, you look hungry, young man, change the stones to bread. Jesus said, man lives not by bread alone, but every word from the mouth of God. Next, we have the political temptation. He's taken to the top of a mountain and shown the nations of the world and says, you can come into control of all these if you'll bow to me. And then, now you're so spiritual, let's go up to the top of Herod's temple and see you cast yourself down, and God will bear you up and you won't even bruise your heels. So he says, you shall not tempt the Lord your God. Those are the 3 temptations of Christ in the desert. The Buddha also goes into the forest, has conferences with the leading gurus of the day, and goes past them. Comes to the Bo tree, the tree of illumination, undergoes 3 temptations. They're not the same temptations, but they are 3 temptations. And one is that of lust, another is that of fear, and another is that of social duty, doing what you're told. And then both of these men come back and they choose disciples who help them establish a new way of consciousness in terms of what they have discovered there. These are the same hero deeds. These are the spiritual hero deeds. Moses, the Buddha, Christ, Muhammad literally, and we know this about him. He was a camel caravan master, but he would leave his home and go out into a little mountain cave that he found and meditate and meditate and meditate and meditate. And one day a voice says, "Write," and we have the Quran, you know. It's an old story.
Sometimes it seems to me that we ought to feel pity for the hero instead of admiration. So many of them have sacrificed their own needs.
They all have.
And very often what they accomplish is shattered by the inability of the followers to see.
Yeah. You come out of the forest with gold and it turns to ashes. That's another motif that occurs.
In this culture of easy religion, cheaply achieved, it seems to me we've forgotten that all three of the great religions teach that the trials of the hero journey are a significant part of it, that there's no reward without renunciation and without a price. The Quran speaks, "Do you think that you shall enter the garden of bliss without such trials as come to those who passed before you?"
Well, if you realize what the real problem is, and that is of losing primarily thinking about yourself and your own self-protection, losing yourself, giving yourself to another. That's what a trial in itself, is it not? Mm-hmm. There's a big transformation of consciousness that's concerned. And what all the myths have to deal with is transformation of consciousness. That you're thinking in this way, and you have now to think in that way.
Well, how is the consciousness transformed?
By the trials.
The test that the hero
Tests
undergoes.
Or certain illuminating revelations. Trials and revelations are what it's all about.
Well, who in society today is making any heroic myth at all for us? Do movies do this? Do movies create hero myths?
I don't know. Now, my experience of movies, I mean, the significant experience I had of movies was when I was a boy, and they were all really movies. They weren't talkies. They were black and white movies. And I had a hero figure who meant something to me, and he served as a kind of model for myself in my physical character, and that was Douglas Fairbanks. I wanted to be a synthesis of Douglas Fairbanks and Leonardo da Vinci. That was my idea. But those were models, were roles that came to me.
Does a movie like Star Wars fill some of that need for the spiritual adventure, for the hero?
Oh, it's perfect. It does the cycle perfectly. It's not simple morality play. It has to do with the powers of life and their inflection through the action of man. One of the wonderful things I think about this adventure into space is that the narrator, the artist, the one thinking up the story, is in a field that is not covered by our own knowledges, you know. There was much of the adventure in the old stories is where they go into regions that no one's been in before. Well, we've now conquered the planet, so there are no empty spaces for the imagination to go forth and fight its own war, you know, with powers. And that was the first thing I felt there. There's a whole new realm for the imagination to open out and live its forms.
Do you, when you look at something like Star Wars, recognize some of the themes of the hero throughout mythology?
Well, I think that George Lucas was using standard mythological figures. The old man as the advisor. Well, specifically, what he made me think of is the Japanese sword master.
Remember, a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him.
I've known some of those people, and this man has a bit their character.
Well, there's something mythological, too, isn't there, in the sense that the hero is helped by this stranger who shows up and gives him some instrument, a sword or a sheaf of light, shaft of light.
He gives him not only a physical instrument, but a psychological commitment and a psychological center.
This time, let go your conscious self and act on instinct.
Well, he had him exercising with that strange weapon and then pulled the mask over. That's real Japanese stuff.
I'll take them myself.
When I took our two sons to see it, they did the same thing the audience did at that moment when the voice of Ben Kenobi says to Luke Skywalker in the climactic moment,
"Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke."
The audience broke out into elation, into applause.
Well, you see, this thing communicates. It is in a language that is talking to young people today, and that's marvelous.
So the hero goes for something. He doesn't just go along for the ride. He's not a mere adventurer.
Well, a serendipitous adventure can take place also. You know what the word serendipity comes from? It comes from the Sanskrit, serendripa, the Isle of Silk, which was formerly the name of Ceylon. And it's a story about a family that's just rambling on its way to Ceylon, and all these adventures take place. So you can have the serendipitous adventure as well.
Is the adventurer who takes that kind of trip a hero in the mythological
He
sense?
is ready for it. This is a very interesting thing about these mythological themes. The achievement of the hero is one that he is ready for, and it's really a manifestation of his character. And it's amusing the way in which the landscape and the conditions of the environment match the readiness of the hero. The adventure that he's ready for is the one that he gets.
Look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, Princess. I expect to be well paid.
The mercenary, Solo, begins as a mercenary and ends up as a hero.
He was a very practical guy, a materialist in his character, at least as he thought of himself, but he was a compassionate human being at the same time and didn't know it. The adventure evoked a quality of his character that he hadn't known he possessed.
I love you.
He thinks he's an egoist, he really isn't. And that's a very lovable kind of human being, I think, and there are lots of them functioning beautifully in the world. They think they're working for themselves, very practical and all, but no, there's something else pushing them.
What did you think about the scene in the bar?
That's my favorite, not only in this piece, but of many, many pieces I've ever seen. Well, where you are is on the edge. You're about to embark into the outlying spaces. And
a real adventure on
it. A real adventure. This is the jumping off place. And there is where you meet people who've been out there, and they run the machines that go out there, and you haven't been there. It reminds me a little bit in Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, the atmosphere before you start off the adventure. You're in a seaport, and there's old salt seamen who've been on the sea, and that's their world, and these are the space people also.
I got a bad feeling about this.
The walls are Don't just stand there, try and brace it with something.
But my favorite scene was when they were in the garbage compactor and the walls were closing in, and I thought, that's like the belly of the whale that Joe
That's
Campbell...
what it is. Yeah, that's where they were. They were down in the belly of the whale.
What's the mythological significance of the belly?
It's the descent into the dark. Jonah in the whale. I mean, that's a standard motif of going into the whale's belly and coming out again.
Why must the hero do that?
The whale represents the personification, you might say, of all that is in the unconscious. In reading these things psychologically, water is the unconscious. The creature in the water would be the dynamism of the unconscious, which is dangerous and powerful and has to be controlled by consciousness. The first stage in the hero adventure, when he starts off on adventure, is leaving the realm of light, which he controls and knows about, and moving toward the threshold. And it's at the threshold that the monster of the abyss comes to meet him. And then there are 2 or 3 results. One, the hero is cut to pieces and descends into the abyss in fragments to be resurrected. Or he may kill the dragon power, as Siegfried does when he kills the dragon. But then he tastes the dragon blood. That's say he has to assimilate that power. And when Siegfried has killed the dragon and tasted the blood, he hears the song of nature. He has transcended his humanity, you know, and associated himself with the powers of nature, which are the powers of our life, from which our mind removes us. You see, this thing up here, this consciousness thinks it's running the shop. It's a secondary organ. It's a secondary organ of a total human being, and it must not put itself in control. It must submit and serve the humanity of the body.
Join me, and I will complete your training.
When it does put itself in control, you get this father, the man who's gone over to the intellectual side.
I'll never join you! If you only knew the power of the dark side.
He isn't thinking or living in terms of humanity, he's living in terms of a system. And this is the threat to our lives. We all face it. We all operate in our society in relation to a system. Now, is the system going to eat you up and relieve you of your humanity? Or are you going to be able to use the system to human purposes?
Would the hero with 1,000 faces help us to answer that question about how to change the system so that we are not serving it?
I don't think it would help you to change the system, but it would help you to live in the system as a human being.
By doing what?
Well, like Luke Skywalker, not going over, but resisting its impersonal claims.
But I can hear someone out there in the audience saying, well, that's all well and good for the imagination of a George Lucas or for the scholarship of a Joseph Campbell, but that isn't what happens in my life.
You bet it does. If the person doesn't listen to the demands of his own spiritual and heart life and insists on a certain program, you're going to have a schizophrenic crack-up. The person has put himself off-center. He has aligned himself with a programmatic life, and it's not the one the body's interested in at all. I mean, the world's full of people who have stopped listening to themselves. In my own life, I've had many opportunities to commit myself to a system and to go with it and to obey its requirements. My life has been that of a maverick. I would not submit.
You really believe that the creative spirit ranges on its own out there beyond the boundaries?
Yeah, I do.
Something of the hero in that. I don't mean to suggest that you see yourself as a hero.
No, I don't, but I see myself as a maverick.
So perhaps the hero lurks in each one of us when we don't know it.
Well, yes. I mean, our life evokes our character, and you find out more about yourself as you go on. And it's very nice to be able to put yourself in situations that will evoke your higher nature rather than your lower.
Give me an example.
I can give you a story. I'm dealing with an Iroquois story right now. There's a motif that comes in American Indian stories very often, what I call the refusal of suitors. A girl with her mother lived in a wigwam on the edge of the village. She was a very handsome girl, but extremely proud, and would not accept any of the boys. They proposed to her through the mother, and the mother was terribly annoyed with her. Well, one day they're out collecting wood, and they have gone a long way from the village. And while they are collecting the wood, a terrific darkness comes over them. Now, this wasn't the darkness of night descending. When you have a darkness like that, there's some magician at work somewhere. So the mother says, well, let's gather some bark and make a little wigwam, a bark wigwam for ourselves, and collect wood for a fire, and we'll just spend the night here. So they do that, and the mother falls asleep. And the girl looks, and there's this magnificent guy standing there with a wampum sash, glorious, and feathers and all this kind of black feathers. He says, I've come to marry you, and I'll await your reply. She accepts the guy, and the mother accepts the man. And he gives the mother the wampum belt to prove that he's serious about all this. So he goes away with the girl. She has acquiesced. Mere human beings weren't good enough for her, but here's something that really, so she's in another domain. Now the adventure is marvelous. She goes with him to his village, and they enter his lodge. The people in there greet her, and she feels very comfortable about it and all. And then the next day, he says, I'm going off to hunt. So he leaves the lodge, and the door is closed with a flap. There's a flap. When he closes the flap, she hears a strange sound. So there's the whole day, and she's just in the hut. And as evening comes, she hears that strange sound again. And the door flap is flung off, and in comes this prodigious serpent with his tongue darting, and he puts his head in her lap and says, now you must search my head for lice and things like that. And she finds all kinds of horrible things there and kills them all, and then he withdraws, and in a moment, after the gate door has been closed, it opens again, and in he comes, the same beautiful young man again, and said, were you afraid of me when I came in just now? No, she said she wasn't at all afraid. Next day, he goes off to hunt. And then she leaves the lodge to gather wood. And the first thing she sees is an enormous serpent basking on the rocks. And then another, and then another. Then she begins to feel very badly, very homesick and discouraged. Then the evening, the serpent, and then the man again. The third day, when he leaves, she decides she's going to try to get out of this place. So she goes out, and she's standing in the woods thinking, and a voice speaks to her, and she turns, and there's a little old man there. And he says, darling, you are in trouble. The man that you've married is one of 7 brothers. They are great magicians. And like many people of this kind, their hearts are not in their bodies. There's a collection of 7 hearts in a bag that is hidden under the bed of the eldest to whom you are married. You must go get that, and then we'll deal with the next part of the adventure. She goes in and finds a bag of hearts and is running out, and a voice calls after her, stop, stop. It's the voice of the magician. And she continues to run. He says, you may think you can get away from me, but you never can. And just at that point, she hears the voice of the old man. He says, I'll help you, dear. And he's pulling her out of the water. She didn't even know that she was in water.
What does that say to you?
That's to say you have moved out of the hard land, the solid earth, and are in the field of the unconscious. And she had pulled herself into the transcendent realm and got caught in the negative powers of the abyss, and she's being rescued now by the upper powers. What you have done has been to elevate yourself out of the local field and put yourself in a field of higher power, higher danger. And are you going to be able to handle it? If you are not eligible for this place into which you put yourself, it's going to be a demon marriage. It's going to be a real mess. If you are eligible, it can be a glory that will give you a life that is yours in your own way.
So these stories of mythology are simply trying to express a truth that can't be grasped any other way.
It's the edge, the interface between what can be known and what is never to be discovered, because it is a mystery transcendent of all human research. The source of life. What is it? No one knows.
Why are stories important for getting at that?
Well, I think it's important to live life with a knowledge of its mystery and of your own mystery. And it gives life a new zest, a new balance, a new harmony to do this. I mean, therapy and psychological therapy, when people find out what it is that's ticking in them, they get straightened out. And what is it that life is? I find thinking in mythological terms has helped people visibly. You can see it happen.
How? What does it do?
It erases anxieties. It puts them in accord with the inevitables of their life, and they can see the positive values of what are the negative aspects of what is positive. It's whether you're going to say no to the serpent or yes to the serpent. It's easy as that.
No to the adventure?
Yeah, the adventure of being alive, of living.
When I was growing up, tales of King Arthur, tales of the medieval knights, tales of the dragon slayers were very strong in my world.
Dragons represent greed, really. The European dragon guards things in his cave, and what he guards are heaps of gold and virgins. And he can't make use of either of them, but he just guards. There's no vitality of experience, either of the value of the gold or of the female whom he's guarding there. Psychologically, the dragon is one's own binding of oneself to one's ego, and you're captured in your own dragon cage. And the problem of the psychiatrist is to break that dragon, open him up, so that you can have a larger field of relationships. Jung had a patient come to him who felt alone, and she drew a picture of herself as caught in the rocks. From the waist down, she was bound in rocks. And this was on a windy shore, and the wind blowing and her hair blowing, and all the gold, which is the sign of the vitality of life, was locked in the rocks. And the next picture that he had her draw had followed something he had said to her. Suddenly, a lightning flash hit the rocks, and the gold came pouring out. And then she found reflected on rocks round about the gold. And there was no more gold in the rocks. It was all available on the top. And in the conferences that followed, those patches of gold were identified. They were her friends. She wasn't alone. But she had locked herself in her own little room and life, but she had friends. Do you see what I'm meaning? This is killing the dragon. And you have fears and things. This is the dragon. That's exactly what that's all about. At least the European dragon. Chinese dragon is different.
What is it?
It represents the vitality of the swamps, and the dragon comes out beating his belly and saying, ha, 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 ha. You know? That's another kind of dragon. And he's the one that yields the bounty and the waters and all that kind of thing. He's the great, glorious thing. But this is the negative one that cuts down.
So what you're saying is if there are not dragons out there, and there may not be
the real dragon is in you.
And what is that real dragon?
That's your ego holding you in.
What's my ego?
What I want, what I believe, what I can do, what I think I love, and all that. What I regard as the aim of my life and so forth. It might be too small. It might be that which pins you down. And if it's simply that of doing what the environment tells you to do, it certainly is pinning you down. And so the environment is your dragon as it reflects within yourself.
How do I slay?
How do you
slay that dragon in me? What's the journey I have to make? You have to make. Each of us has to make. You talk about something called the soul's high adventure.
My general formula for my students is follow your bliss. I mean, find where it is and don't be afraid to follow it.
Can my bliss be my life's love or my life's work? Is it my work or my life?
Well, if the work that you're doing is the work that you chose to do because you are enjoying it, that's it. But if you think, oh, gee, I couldn't do that, you know, that's your dragon that's locking you in. Oh, no, I couldn't be a writer. Oh, no, I couldn't do what so-and-so is doing.
Unlike the classical heroes, we're not going on our journey to save the world, but to save ourselves.
And in doing that, you save the world. I mean, you do. The influence of a vital person vitalizes. There's no doubt about it. The world is a wasteland. People have the notion of saving the world by shifting it around and changing the rules and so forth. And no, any world is a living world if it's alive. And the thing is to bring it to life. And the way to bring it to life is to find in your own case where your life is and be alive yourself, it seems to me.
That's the power of the teacher, isn't it? To bring vitality to others, to make others see the vitality in them, children.
Well, it happens. That's one of the delights of teaching. I mean, when you're not teaching in order to have an easy job, but because you really have something to teach and you love young people and you want to give what you've got found to them. And to see them come alive is the reward of teaching.
Did you say I have to take that journey and go down there and slay those dragons? Do I have to go alone?
If you have someone who can help you, that's fine too. But ultimately, the last trick has to be done by you.
In all of these journeys of mythology, there's a place everyone wishes to find. What is it? The Buddhists talk of nirvana. Jesus talks of peace. There's a place of rest and repose. Is that typical of the hero's journey? That there's a place to find?
That's a place in yourself of rest. Now this I know a little bit about from athletics. The athlete who is in championship form has a quiet place in himself. And it's out of that his action comes. If he's all in the action field, he's not performing properly. There's a center out of which you act. And Jean, my wife, a dancer, tells me that in dance this is true too. There's the center that has to be known and held. There it's quite physically recognized by the person. But unless this center has been found, you're torn apart. Tension comes. Now, the Buddha's word is nirvana. Nirvana is a psychological state of mind. It's not a place like heaven. It's not something that's not here. It is here in the middle of the turmoil, what's called samsara, the whirlpool of life conditions. That nirvana is what? It is the condition that comes when you are not compelled by desire or by fear or by social commitments. When you hold your center and act out of there.
And like all heroes, the Buddha doesn't show you the truth. the illumination. He shows you the way too.
The way. But it's got to be your way too. I mean, how should I get rid of fear? The Buddha can't tell me how I'm going to do it. There are exercises that different teachers will give you, but they may not work for you. All a teacher can do is give you a clue of the direction. He's like a lighthouse that says there are rocks over here and steer clear.
You talk a lot about consciousness.
Yes.
Most people hear that term and, like me, have only a veiled understanding of it. What is it?
Gene and I are living in Hawaii, and we're living right by the ocean, and we have a little lanai, a little porch, and there's a coconut tree that grows up through that porch, and it goes on up. And there's a kind of vine plant, a big powerful thing with leaves like this, that has grown up the coconut tree. Now that plant sends forth little feelers to go out and clutch the plant, and it knows where the plant is and what to do, and where the tree is, and it grows up like this, and it opens a leaf, and that leaf immediately turns to where the sun is. Now you can't tell me that leaf doesn't know where the sun is going to be. All of the leaves go just like that, what's called heliotropism, turning toward where the sun is. That's a form of consciousness. There is a plant consciousness. There is a animal consciousness. And we share all of these things. You eat certain foods, and the bile knows whether there's something there for it to go to work on. I mean, this whole thing is consciousness. I begin to feel more and more that the whole world is conscious. Certainly the vegetable world is conscious. And when you live in the woods, as I did as a kid, you can see all these different consciousnesses relating to themselves. Now, it is a part of the sort of Cartesian mode to think of consciousness as being something peculiar to the head, that this is the organ originating consciousness. It isn't. It's an organ that inflects consciousness to a certain direction, a certain set of purposes. But there's a whole consciousness here in the body. And the whole living world is informed by consciousness. I have a feeling that consciousness and energy are the same thing somehow. Where you really see energy, there is consciousness.
Scientists are beginning to talk quite openly about the Gaia principle.
There you are, the whole planet as an organism.
Mother Earth.
And you see, if you will think of ourselves as coming out of the earth, rather than as being thrown in here from somewhere else, you know, thrown out of the earth, we are the earth. We are the consciousness of the earth. These are the eyes of the earth. And this is the voice of the earth. What else?
How do we raise our consciousness?
Well, that's a matter of what you are disposed to think about. And that's what meditations are for. And all of life is a meditation, most of it unintentional. A lot of people spend most of it in meditating on where their money's coming from and where it's going to go, but that's a level of meditation. Or if you have a family to bring up, you're concerned for the family. These are all perfectly very important concerns, but they have to do with physical conditions mostly, and spiritual conditions of the children, of course. But how are you going to communicate spiritual consciousness to the children if you don't have it yourself? So how do you get that? Then you think about the myths. What the myths are for is to bring us into a level of consciousness that is spiritual. Just for example, I walk off 52nd Street and 5th Avenue into St. Patrick's Cathedral. I've left a very busy city, and one of the most fiercely economically inspired cities on the planet. I walk into that cathedral, and everything around me speaks of spiritual mystery. The mystery of the cross, what's that all about there? The stained glass windows, which bring another atmosphere in. My consciousness has been brought up onto another level altogether. and I am on a different platform. And then I walk out, and I'm back in this one again. Now, can I hold something from that? Well, certain prayers or meditations that are associated with the whole context there. These are what are called mantras in India, little meditation themes that hold your consciousness on that level instead of letting it drop down here all the way. And then what you can finally do is to recognize that this is simply a lower level of that.
The cathedral at Chartres, which you love so much, also expresses a relationship of the human to the cosmos, doesn't it?
Well, I think everyone who has spent any time at Chartres has felt something very special about this cathedral. I've been there about 8 times. When I was a student in Paris, I went down there about 5 times and spent one whole weekend, and I identified and looked at every single figure in that cathedral. I was there so much that the concierge, this little old fellow who took care of the cathedral, he came to me one noontime and he said, would you like to go up with me and ring the bells? I said, I sure would. So we climbed the Flèche, the tower, up to where the great bell was, the great, enormous bronze bell. And there was a little, like a seesaw. And he stood on one end of the seesaw, and I stood on the other end of the seesaw. And there was a little bar there for us to hold on to. He gave the thing a push, and then he was on it, and I was on it. We started going up and down, and the wind blowing through our hair up there in the cathedral. And then it began underneath, bong, you know, bong, bong. I tell you, it was one of the most thrilling adventures in my life. And when it was all over, he brought me down. He said, I want to show you where my room is. Well, in a cathedral, you have the nave, and then the transept, and then the apse. And around the apse is the choir screen. Now, the choir screen in Chartres is about that wide. And he took me in a little door into the middle of the choir screen, and there was his little bed and a little table with a lamp on it. And when I looked out, there was the Black Madonna, the vitrine, the window of the Black Madonna, and that was where he lived. Now, there was a man living in a meditation, a constant meditation. I mean, that was a very moving, beautiful thing. Well, I've been there time and time again since.
What do you find when you go there? What does it say about all that we've been discussing?
Well, the first thing it says is it takes me back to a time when these principles informed the society. I mean, you can tell what's informing the society by the size of what the building is that's the tallest building in the place. When you approach a medieval town, the cathedral's the tallest thing in the place. When you approach a 17th century city, it's the political palace that's the tallest thing in the place. And when you approach a modern city, it's office buildings and dwellings that are the tallest things in the place. And if you go to Salt Lake City, you'll see the whole thing illustrated right in front of your face. First, the temple was built. The temple was built right in the center of the city. I mean, this was a proper organization. That's the spiritual center from which all flows in all directions. And then the Capitol was built right beside the temple. And it's bigger than the temple. And now the biggest thing is the office building that takes care of the affairs of both the temple and the political building. That's the history of Western civilization, from the Gothic through the princely periods of the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries to this economic world that we're in now.
In New York now, the debate is over who can build the tallest building, not to praise, but to build the tallest building.
Yeah, and they are magnificent. I mean, some of the things that are going up in New York now really are, and this is a kind of architectural triumph. And what it is the statement of the city. We are financial, power center, and look what we can do. It's a kind of virtuosic acrobatic stunt.
Will new myths come from there?
Well, something might. You can't predict what a myth is going to be any more than you can predict what you're going to dream tonight. Myths and dreams come from the same place. They come from realizations of some kind that have then to find expression in symbolic form. And the only myth that's going to be worth thinking about in the immediate future is one that's talking about the planet, not this city, not these people, but the planet and everybody on it. That's my main thought for what the future myth is going to be. And what it will have to deal with will be exactly what all myths have dealt with. The maturation of the individual, the gradual, the pedagogical way to follow from dependency through adulthood to maturity and then to the exit, and how to do it. And then how to relate to this society, and how to relate this society to the world of nature and the cosmos. That's what the myths have all talked about. That's what this one's got to talk about. But the society that it's got to talk about is the society of the planet. And until that gets going, you don't have anything.
There's that wonderful photograph you have of the Earth seen from space. And it's very small, and at the same time, it's very grand.
You don't see any divisions there of nations or states or anything of the kind. This might be the symbol, really, for the new mythology to come. That is the country that we are going to be celebrating. And those are the people that we are one with.
This has been a Highbridge audio presentation.
Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth with Bill Moyers. Program 2, The Message of the Myth.
Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep.
This is the song of the world from a legend of the Pima Indians. In the beginning, there was only darkness everywhere, darkness and water. And the darkness gathered thick in places, crowding together and then separating, crowding and separating.
And the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light."
And this is from the Hindu Upanishads. In the beginning, there was only the great self reflected in the form of a person. Reflecting, it found nothing but itself. Then its first word was, "This am I."
Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth with Bill Moyers. The Message of the Myth.
The second best are misunderstood, because those are the thoughts that are supposed to refer to that which can't be thought about, you know, and one gets stuck with the thoughts. The third best are what we talk about, you see. And myth is that field of reference, metaphors referring to what is absolutely transcendent.
What can't be known.
What can't be known.
Or can't be named.
Yes.
Except in our own feeble attempt to clothe it in language.
And the ultimate word in our language for that which is transcendent is God.
Do you remember what went through your mind the first time you saw Michelangelo's creation?
By the time I became aware of that, my notion of divinity was not quite so personal, you know. The idea of God, that he's a bearded old man of some kind with certain not very pleasant temperament. That is, I would say, a sort of materialistic way of talking about the transcendent.
There's just the opposite of it, found on an island in the harbor of Bombay from around the 8th century.
This is a wonderful cave. You enter the cave from a bright sky. Of course, moving into the darkness, your eyes are blanked out. But if you just keep walking slowly, gradually the eyes adjust, and this enormous thing, it's about 19 feet high and 19 feet across. The central head is the mask of eternity. This is the mask of God.
Mask of eternity.
That is the metaphor through which eternity is to be experienced as a radiance.
And these other two figures?
Whenever one moves out of the transcendent, one comes into a field of opposites. These two pairs of opposites come forth as male and female from the two sides. One has eaten of the tree of the knowledge, not only of good and evil, but of male and female, of right and wrong, of this and that, of light and dark. Everything in the field of time is dual, past and future, dead and alive, all this, being and non-being, isn't.
And what's the significance of them being beside the mask of God, the mask of eternity? What is this sculpture saying to us?
The mask represents the middle, and the two represent the two opposites. And they always come in pairs. And put your mind in the middle. Most of us put our minds on the side of the good against what we think of as evil. It was Heraclitus, I think, who said, "For God, all things are good and right and just, but for man, some things are right and others are not." You're in the field of time when you're man. And one of the problems of life is to live in the realization of both terms. That's to say, I know the center, and I know that good and evil are simply temporal apparitions.
Well, are some myths more or less true than others?
They're true in different senses, do you see? Here's a whole mythology based on the insight that transcends duality. Ours is a mythology that's based on the insight of duality. And so our religion tends to be ethical in its accent. Sin and atonement, right and wrong. It started with a sin, you see. In other words, moving out of the mythological zone, the Garden of Paradise, where there is no time, and where men and women don't even know that they're different from each other. The two are just creatures. And God and man are practically the same. He walks in the cool of the evening in the garden where we are. And then they eat the apple, the knowledge of the pairs of opposites. And man and woman then cover their shame. They're different. God and man, they're different. Man and nature is against man. I once heard a wonderful lecture by Daisetsu Suzuki. You remember this wonderful old Zen philosopher who was over here? He was in his 90s. He started a lecture in Switzerland that I heard in Ascona. He stood up with his hands on his side and he said, "God against man, man against God, man against nature, nature against man, nature against God, God against nature." Very funny religion. Now, in the other mythologies, one puts oneself in accord with the world. If the world is a mixture of good and evil, you do not put yourself in accord with it. You identify with the good and you fight against the evil. And this is a religious system which belongs to the Near East following Zarathustra's time. It's in the biblical tradition. All the way in Christianity and Islam as well. This business of not being with nature, and we speak with sort of derogation of the nature religions. You see, with that fall in the garden, nature was regarded as corrupt. There's a myth for you that corrupts the whole world for us. And every spontaneous act is sinful because nature is corrupt and has to be corrected, must not be yielded to. You get a totally different civilization, a totally different way of living, according to your myth as to whether nature is fallen or whether nature is itself a manifestation of divinity, and the spirit being the revelation of the divinity that's inherent in nature.
But don't you think that Americans, modern Americans, have rejected this idea, this Indian idea, this ancient idea of nature as revealing the divinity, because it would have kept us from achieving dominance over nature?
Yeah, but that's the biblical condemnation of nature that they inherited from their own religion and brought with them. God is not in nature. God is separate from nature, and nature is not God. And this distinction between God and the world is not to be found in basic Hinduism or Buddhism either. I'll never forget the experience I had when I was in Japan. To be in a place that never heard of the fall in the Garden of Eden. To be in a place where I can read in one of the Shinto texts, the processes of nature cannot be evil. When every impulse, every natural impulse is not to be corrected, but to be sublimated, you know, to be beautified. And the glorious interest in the beauty of nature and cooperation with nature and coordination, so that in some of those gardens you don't know where nature begins and art ends. This to me was a tremendous experience, and it's another mythology.
Speaking of different mythologies, let's just have a little fun here. I took these from your atlas.
Yes.
I'll read Genesis. I'll read from Genesis, and then you identify and read from the corresponding text.
Yes.
Genesis 1. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply."
And now this is from a legend of the Basari people of West Africa. Unumbote made a human being. Its name was man. Unumbote next made an antelope named Antelope. Unumbote made a snake named Snake. And Unumbote said to them, "The earth has not yet been pounded. You must pound the ground smooth where you are sitting." Unumbote gave them seeds of all kinds and said, "Go plant these."
And Genesis 1. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good.
And from the Upanishad, then he realized, "I indeed am this creation, for I have poured it forth from myself." In that way, he became this creation. And verily, he who knows this becomes in this creation a creator. That's the clincher there. When you know this, then you've identified with the creative principle yourself, which is the God power in the world, which means in you. It's beautiful.
What do you think we're looking for when we subscribe to one of these theories of creation, one of these stories of creation? What are we looking for?
Well, I think what we're looking for is a way of experiencing the world in which we are living that will open to us the transcendent that informs it, and at the same time informs ourselves within it. That's what people want. That's what the soul asks for.
You mean we're looking for some accord with the mystery that informs all things, that what you call that vast ground of silence, which we all share?
Yes, but not only to find it, but to find it actually in our environment, in our world, to recognize it, to have some kind of instruction that will enable us to see the divine presence
in the world and in us.
And in India, this wonderful Anjali, this greeting, you know what that means?
No.
That's the greeting of prayer, isn't it? That's what we use for prayer. They greet you with that. That's greeting the God that's in you as you come in. These people are aware of the divine presence. When you enter an Indian home as a guest, you are a visiting deity, and you feel it, by God, the way they treat you. It's something in the way of a hospitality that you don't get where you have simply one person and another person. It's a recognition of the identity.
But weren't people who told these stories and believed them and acted on them asking far more simple questions, you know, who made the world? How was the world made? Why was the world made? Aren't these the questions that these creation stories are trying to address?
No. It's through that answer that they see that the Creator is present in the whole world. Do you see what I mean? This story that we've just read, I see that I am this creation, says the God. When you see that God says he is the creation, and then you are a creature, well, the God is within you, and the man you're talking to also. And so there's that realization, two aspects of the one divinity.
Accord again, harmony again.
Wonderful thing.
Yeah. Let me ask you some questions about these common features in these stories, the significance of the forbidden fruit.
Well, there's this standard folk tale motif called the one forbidden thing. Remember in Bluebeard, don't open that closet, you know? And then one always does it. And in the Old Testament story, God gives the one forbidden thing, and he knows very well. Now I'm interpreting God. He knows very well that man's going to eat the forbidden fruit, but it's by doing that that man becomes the initiator of his own life. Life really begins with that.
I also find in some of these early stories the human tendency to find someone to blame. Let me read Genesis 1, then I'll ask you to read one from the Basara legend.
Right.
Genesis 1, and God said, have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? Then the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. And the Lord God said to the woman, what is this you've done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. I mean, you talk about buck passing, it starts very early.
That's right.
And then there's the Basara legend.
It's been tough on serpents, too. One day, Snake said, we too should eat these fruits. Why must we go hungry? Antelope said, but we don't know anything about this fruit. Then man and his wife took some of the fruit and ate it. Unumbate came down from the sky and asked, who ate the fruit? They answered, we did. Unumbate asked, who told you that you could eat that fruit? They replied, Snake did. It's the same story.
Poor Snake.
That's the same
What do you
story.
make of this, that in all of these stories, the principal actors are pointing to someone else as the initiator of the fall?
Yeah, but it turns out to be Snake. And Snake in both of these stories is the symbol of life throwing off the past and continuing to live.
Why?
The power of life, because the snake sheds its skin, just as the moon sheds its shadow. The snake in most cultures is positive. Even the most poisonous thing in India, the cobra, is a sacred animal. And the serpent, the Naga, the serpent king, Nagaraja, is the next thing to the Buddha. Because the serpent represents the power of life in the field of time to throw off death. And the Buddha represents the power of life in the field of eternity to be eternally alive. Now, I saw a fantastic thing of a Burmese priestess, a snake priestess, who had to bring rain to her people by calling a king cobra from his den and kissing him 3 times on the nose. There was the cobra, the giver of life, the giver of rain, which is of life, as a divine, positive, not negative figure.
The Christian story has turned it around because the serpent was the seducer.
Well, what that amounts to is a refusal to affirm life. Life is evil in this view. Every natural impulse is sinful unless you've been baptized or circumcised in this tradition that we've inherited, for heaven's sakes.
By having been the tempter, women have paid a great price because in mythology, some of this mythology, they are the ones who led to the downfall.
Of course they did. I mean, they represent life. Man doesn't enter life except by woman. And so it is woman who brings us into the world of polarities and a pair of opposites and suffering and all. But I think it's a really childish attitude to say no to life with all its pain, you know? To say this is something that should not have been. Schopenhauer, in one of his marvelous chapters, I think it's in The World's Will and Idea, says life is something that should not have been. It is, in its very essence and character, a terrible thing to consider, this business of living by killing and eating. I mean, it's in sin in terms of all ethical judgments all the time.
As Zorba says, you know, trouble? Life is trouble.
That's it.
Only death is no trouble.
And when people say to me, you know, do you have optimism about the world, you know, how terrible it is? I said, yes, just say it's great. Just the way it is.
But doesn't that lead to a rather passive attitude in the face of evil, in the face of wrong?
You participate in it. Whatever you do is evil for somebody.
But explain that for the audience. I mean, you say yes to that which you...
Well, when I was in India, there was a man whose name was Sri Krishna Menon, and his mystical name was Atmananda, and he was in Trivandrum, and I went to Trivandrum. And I had the wonderful privilege of sitting face to face with him as I'm sitting here with you. And the first thing he said to me is, "Do you have a question?" And because the teacher there always answers questions, he doesn't tell you anything, he answers. And I said, yes, I have a question. I said, since in Hindu thinking all the universe is divine, is a manifestation of divinity itself, how could we say no to anything in the world? How could we say no to brutality, to stupidity, to vulgarity, to thoughtlessness? And he said, for you and me, you must say yes. Well, I learned from my friends who were students of his that that happened to have been the first question he asked his guru, and we had a wonderful talk for about an hour there on this theme of the affirmation of the world. And it confirmed me in a feeling I had had that who are we to judge? And it seems to me that this is one of the great teachings of Jesus.
Well, I see now what you mean in one respect. In some classic Christian doctrine, the world is to be despised. Life is to be redeemed in the hereafter. It is heaven where our rewards come. And if you affirm that which you deplore, as you say, you're affirming the world, which is our eternity of the moment.
That's what I would say. Eternity isn't some later time. Eternity isn't a long time. Eternity has nothing to do with time. Eternity is that dimension of here and now, which thinking in time cuts out.
This is it. This is my...
If you don't get it here, you won't get it anywhere. And the experience of eternity right here and now is the function of life. There's a wonderful formula that the Buddhists have for the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva, the one whose being, sattva, is illumination, Bodhi, who realizes his identity with eternity and at the same time his participation in time. And the attitude is not to withdraw from the world when you realize how horrible it is, but to realize that this horror is simply the foreground of a wonder. And come back and participate in it. All life is sorrowful is the first Buddhist saying, and it is. It wouldn't be life if there were not temporality involved, which is sorrow, loss, loss, loss.
That's a pessimistic note.
Well, I mean, you got to say yes to it and say it's great this way. I mean, this is the way God intended it.
You don't really believe that?
But this is the way it is. And I don't believe anybody intended it, but this is the way it is. And Joyce's wonderful line, you know, history is a nightmare from which I'm trying to awake. And the way to awake from it is not to be afraid and to recognize, as I did in my conversation with that Hindu guru or teacher that I told you of, that all of this as it is as it has to be, and it is a manifestation of the eternal presence in the world. The end of things always is painful. Pain is part of there being a world at all.
But if one accepted that isn't the ultimate conclusion, to say, well, I won't try to reform any laws or fight any battles or...
I didn't say that.
Isn't the logical... Couldn't one draw that, though, the philosophy of nihilism?
Well, that's not the necessary thing to draw. You could say, I will participate in this row, and I will join the army, and I will go to war.
I'll do the best I can.
I will participate in the game. It's a wonderful, wonderful opera, except that it hurts. And that wonderful Irish saying, you know, is this a private fight or can anybody get into it? This is the way life is. And the hero is the one who can participate in it decently, in the way of nature, not in the way of personal rancor, revenge, or anything of the kind. Let me tell you one story here of a samurai warrior, a Japanese warrior, who had the duty to avenge the murder of his overlord. And he actually, after some time, found and cornered the man who had murdered his overlord. And he was about to deal with him with his samurai sword when this man in the corner, in a passion of terror, spat in his face. And the samurai sheathed the sword and walked away. Why did he do that?
Why?
Because he was made angry, and if he had killed that man, then it would have been a personal act. It was another kind of act. That's what he had come to do.
Let me tell you what happens to me when I read these stories, no matter the culture of their origin. I feel first this sense of wonder at the spectacle of the human imagination, simply groping to try to understand this existence. Does that ever happen to you?
I tell you, mythology I think of as the homeland of the muses, the inspirers of art, the inspirers of poetry. And to see life as a poem and yourself participating in a poem is what the myth does for you.
What do you mean, a poem?
I mean a vocabulary in the form not of words, but of acts and adventures, which is connotative, which connotes something transcendent of the action here, and which yet informs the whole thing, so that you always feel in accord with the universal being.
Well, the interesting thing to me is that far from undermining my faith, your work in mythology has liberated my faith from the cultural prisons to which it had been sentenced.
It liberated my own. I know it's going to do it with everybody who really gets the message. Every mythology, every religion is true in this sense. It is true as metaphorical of the human and cosmic mystery. But when it gets stuck to the metaphor, then you're in trouble.
The metaphor being?
Well, Jesus ascended to heaven. The story is he ascended bodily to heaven. The story is that his mother, still alive, asleep, ascended to heaven. So this is metaphorical of something. You don't have to throw it away. All you have to find is what it's saying.
What do you think it is saying?
What it's saying is he didn't go out there, he went in here, which is where you must go too, and ascend to heaven through the inward space to that source from which you and all life came. That's the sense of that.
But aren't you undermining one of the great cardinal doctrines of the traditional classic Christian faith, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus prefiguring our own and overcoming the body with a higher physical truth?
Well, that would be what I would call the mistaken reading of the symbol. That's reading it in terms of prose instead of in terms of poetry. That's reading it, and that's reading a metaphor in terms of the denotation instead of in terms of the connotation. Do you understand that? It's a purely literary problem.
The poetry gets to the unseen reality.
That which is beyond even the concept of reality. It's that which transcends all thought. It's putting you there all the time, and in some way giving you a line to connect with that mystery which you are. And the myths do it, by gosh, they do it. Now, according to the normal way of thinking about the Christian religion, we cannot identify with Jesus. We have to imitate Jesus, but to say, I am God, as Jesus said, is for us blasphemy. However, in the Thomas Gospel, Jesus says, he who drinks from my mouth will become as I am, and I shall be he. Wow. That's Buddhism. We are all manifestations of Buddha consciousness, only don't know it. And the Buddha, the word means the one who waked up, bod, to wake, woke up to the fact that he was Buddha consciousness. And we are all to do that. To wake up to our Jesus within us. This is blasphemy in the normal way of thinking in Christianity, but it's the very essence of Gnosticism and of the Thomas Gospel.
And heaven, that desired goal of most people, is within us?
Heaven and hell are within us, and all the gods are within us. This is the great realization of the Upanishads of India already in the 9th century BC. All the gods, all the heavens, all the worlds are within us. They are magnified dreams, and what dreams are manifestations in image form of the energies of the body in conflict with each other. And that's all myth is. Myth is a manifestation in symbolic images, metaphorical images of the energies within us, moved by the organs of the body, in conflict with each other. This organ wants this, this organ wants this. The brain is one of the organs.
So when we dream, are we fishing in some vast ocean of mythology that
it goes down and down and down. And you can get all mixed up with complexes, you know, things like that, but you're standing on the Lord of the Abyss, really. There's a Polynesian saying that frequently comes to my mind, standing on a whale, fishing for minnows. We are standing on a whale. The ground of being is the ground of our being. And outward turned, we see all these little problems here, but inward, we are the source of them all. That's the big mystical teaching.
You've seen what's happened to primitive societies that are unsettled by white man's civilization. They go to pieces, they disintegrate, they succumb to vice and disease. And isn't that the same thing that's been happening to us since our myths began to disappear?
Absolutely it is.
Isn't that why conservative religious folk today are calling for a return to the old-time religion?
That's right.
I understand their yearning. In my youth, I had fixed stars. They comforted me with their permanence. They gave me a known horizon. They told me that there's a loving, kind, and just Father out there looking down on me, ready to receive me, thinking of my concerns all the time. Now science, medicine, has made it a house cleaning of belief. And I wonder what happens to children who don't have that fixed star, that known horizon, those myths to sustain them.
All they have to do is read the newspaper. I mean, it's a mess. But what the myth has to provide, I mean, just on this immediate level of life instruction, the pedagogical aspect of myth, it has to give life models. And the models have to be appropriate to the possibilities of the time in which you're living. And our time has changed, and it's changed and changed, and it continues to change so fast that what was proper 50 years ago is not proper today. So the virtues of the past are the vices of today. And many of what were thought to be the vices of the past are the necessities of today. And the moral order has to catch up with the moral necessities of actual life in time, here and now. And that's what it's not doing. And that's why it's ridiculous to go back to the old-time religion. A friend of mine composed a song based on the old-time religion. Give me the old-time religion. Let us worship Zarathustra just the way we used to. I'm a Zarathustra booster. He's good enough for me. Let us worship Aphrodite. She's beautiful but flighty. She doesn't wear a nightie, but she's good enough for me. And when you go back to the old-time religion, you're doing something like that. It belongs to another age, another people, another set of human values, another universe. So the old period of the Old Testament, no one had any idea. The world was a little 3-layer cake, and the world consisted of something a few hundred miles around the Near Eastern centers there. No one ever heard of the Aztecs, you know, or of the Chinese even. And so those whole peoples were not considered even as part of the problem to be dealt with. The world changes, then the religion has to be transformed.
But it seems to me that is what we are in fact doing.
That's in fact what we better do. Yeah. But my notion of what the real horror today is what you see in Beirut, where you have the 3 great Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and because the 3 of them have 3 different names for the same biblical God, they can't get on together. They're stuck with their metaphor and don't realize its reference.
So each needs a new myth.
Each needs its own myth all the way. Love thy enemy, you know? Open up. Don't judge.
Given what you know about human beings, is it conceivable to you that there is a point of wisdom beyond the conflicts of truth and illusion by which our lives can be put back together again, that we can develop new models?
It's in the religions. All religions are true for their time. If you can find what the truth is and separate it from the temporal inflection, just bring your same old religion into a new set of metaphors, and you've got it.
Do you see some new metaphors emerging in the modern medium for the old universal truths that you've talked about, the old story?
Well, I think that the Star Wars is a valid mythological perspective, and the problem of is the machine, and the state is the machine. Is the machine going to crush humanity or serve humanity? And humanity comes not from the machine, but from the heart.
Look, help me take this mask off.
But you'll die. I think it was in the Return of the Jedi when Skywalker unmasks his father. The father had been playing one of these machine roles, a state role. He was the uniform, you know? And the removal of that mask was an undeveloped man there. It was kind of a worm. By being executive of a system, one is not developing one's humanity. I think that George Lucas really did a beautiful thing there.
The idea of machine is the idea that we want the world to be made in our image and what we think the world ought to be.
Well, the first time anybody made a tool, I mean, taking a stone and chipping it so that you can handle it, that's the beginning of a machine. It's turning out of nature into your service. But then there comes a time when it begins to dictate to you. I'm having a bit this trouble with my computer, actually. Your computer? Just bought one a couple of months ago, and I can't help thinking of it as having a personality there because it talks back and it behaves in a whimsical way and all of that. So I'm personifying that machine. To me, that machine is almost alive. I could mythologize that darn thing.
There was a wonderful story about, I think, President Eisenhower, when the computer was first being built. You remember that story?
Eisenhower went into a room full of computers, and he puts a question to these machines: is there a God? And they all start up, and there's all those lights flashing and wheels turning and things like that. And after about 10 minutes of that kind of thing, a voice comes forth, and the voice says, "Now there is." Well, I bought this wonderful machine, IBM machine, and it's there. And I'm rather an authority on gods, so I identified the God, and it seems to me an Old Testament God with a lot of rules and no mercy.
It's unforgiving.
You catch you picking up sticks on Saturday, and you're out. That's all.
But isn't it possible to develop toward the computer you're wrestling with at this very moment. Isn't it possible to develop the same kind of attitude of the Pawnee chieftain who said that in the legends of his people, all things speak of Tarawa. All things speak of God. It wasn't a special privileged revelation. God is everywhere in his works, including the computers.
Well, indeed so. I mean, the miracle of what happens on that screen, you know, have you ever looked inside one of those things?
No.
You can't believe it. It's a whole hierarchy of angels, all on slats. And those little tubes, those are miracles. Those are miracles. They are.
One can feel a sense of awe.
Well, I've had a revelation from my computer about mythology, though. You buy a certain software, and there's a whole set of signals that lead to the achievement of your aim, you know? And once you've set it for, let's say, DW3, enter, if you begin fooling around with signals that belong to another system, they just won't work, that's all. You have a system there, a code, a determined code that requires you to use certain terms. Now, similarly in mythology, each religion is a kind of software that has its own set of signals and will work. It'll work. But suppose you've chosen this one. Now, if a person is really involved in a religion and really building his life on it, he better stay with the...
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to get some sleep. It is late here tonight. And, yeah. So, find me on anywhere under Shotgun Scream. And, again, thank you so much for watching. And hope that you podcasts weren't too much.